Homeless woman finds millionaire's wallet on Easter. When she returned it, he did something no one expected. But before we dive into the full story, let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. Now subscribe to the channel and let's get started. The crowd in the plaza seemed larger than usual that Easter morning, with families chatting excitedly and children running in circles chasing pastel-colored eggs. The scent of freshly baked bread and sugary confections mixed with the crisp spring air, and a gentle breeze rustled the ribbons tied to the branches of the old oak tree in the center of town. Underneath that tree, 28-year-old Elena Dixon watched the commotion with a mixture of curiosity and hope in her eyes. She clutched a small wicker basket on her arm, not because she planned to collect eggs, but because tradition demanded everyone carry something festive for the community's Easter gathering. Elena had been living quietly for the last 5 years in a modest apartment on the outskirts of town ever since she'd lost her parents and taken on their last debts. She worked at the local catering hall, arranging tables, washing linens, sometimes helping prepare desserts. It was steady work, though not glamorous, and it left her with little time to dream of bigger opportunities. That particular Easter morning, Elena found herself near the old oak, scanning the crowd for familiar faces, neighbors, the boss from the catering hall, or perhaps her childhood friend Teresa. A series of exclamations and giggles floated in the air, and children darted across her path. While stepping back to avoid colliding with a small boy clutching a chocolate bunny, her foot bumped into something on the ground. She glanced down, spotting what looked like a worn brown leather wallet nestled against the trunk of the oak. She hesitated. In a festive crowd, it wasn't uncommon for small valuables to drop from pockets. People carried little keepsakes, donation envelopes, or candy money for children. Still, a wallet, especially one that looked this expensive, was unusual to find abandoned in a place so public. Elena knelt, picking it up carefully, worried that the rightful owner might be frantic. In her chest, her heart thumped with the sudden importance of the situation. She felt an odd sense of responsibility, as though fate had placed the wallet in her hands for a reason. Elena glanced around, searching for anyone who seemed to be frantically patting their pockets or scanning the ground. Instead, she saw only families relishing the Easter fun, no signs of panic. Nervously, she flipped open the wallet and discovered an identification card. The photograph showed a handsome man in his mid-30s, with neatly styled hair and eyes that seemed to carry both confidence and a distant concern. His name, printed in clean block letters, read, Julian Blackwell. Elena's eyes widened. Everyone in the region had heard the name Blackwell. It was the largest philanthropic family in the area, and the wealthiest. They were rumored to own multiple estates, sit on charitable boards, and fund scholarships for local students. Occasionally, the elder Mr. Blackwell or his children would be spotted at big events in town. If this wallet belonged to one of the Blackwells, it meant she was cradling more than just an ordinary purse of documents. This was something that could matter a great deal, not just to the owner, but to his security team or anyone looking to exploit a wealthy family's vulnerability. Tentatively, Elena flipped through the wallet's compartments. She found crisp banknotes tucked away, a couple of sleek credit cards bearing the Blackwell name, and a business card from a top-tier financial firm. In a side pocket, there was a neatly folded list of donations, numbers so staggering that Elena's breath momentarily caught in her throat. Next to that list was a small photograph, carefully laminated, a snapshot of Julian as a teenager, arms slung casually around another boy who appeared to be a brother or close friend. She realized with a jolt that she was intruding on a private item. Her cheeks flushed with embarrassment. A tug on the back of her mind whispered that she should return the wallet immediately. The problem was how. The Blackwell mansion was known to sit on the far side of the valley behind tall hedges and a private road. She didn't have a car, and buses didn't run frequently on a holiday. Summoning the nerve to appear unannounced at the Blackwell gates wasn't exactly something she'd ever imagined doing. But how could she live with herself if she didn't do everything possible to get it back to Julian or whichever family member was searching for it right now. Elena stepped away from the oak tree, searching once more for anyone who might resemble the photograph on the ID. The crowd continued its pleasant hum of conversation. Children raced around with baskets full of painted eggs, and church bells rang in the distance. No sign of him. Then, across the plaza, she glimpsed a policeman who was stationed to oversee Easter traffic. Perhaps she could hand the wallet to him. Yet a flicker of distrust gave her pause. The policeman was young, new to the force, and she had no guarantee he'd handle something so valuable and personal with the care it deserved. Summoning courage, Elena slipped the wallet into the safest corner of her own basket, covering it discreetly with a small cloth. She'd figure out the next steps once she left the plaza. For the rest of the Easter gathering, Elena could hardly concentrate on the festivities. A sense of urgency, along with confusion, kept her glancing at the time, her heart beating in an unsteady rhythm. She stayed just long enough to say hello to a few neighbors, then hurried off as soon as polite decorum allowed. Her small apartment greeted her with its familiar simplicity, a sturdy second-hand sofa, a scuffed coffee table, and a kitchen with cupboards half-stocked. She placed the basket on the table and carefully extracted Julian's wallet. Settling onto the couch, she thought about calling the phone number on one of his business cards. But that didn't feel right either, dialing a direct line that might belong to a business partner or a personal assistant. She worried that her call would be met with skepticism. If they suspected a scam, she might never get the wallet back to Julian in person. She wanted to do this properly. Finally, Elena resolved to visit the Blackwell property the next morning. She'd take an early bus to the next town, then walk the remainder of the distance. Returning it in person was the only way to ensure the wallet reached its rightful owner. Even as she decided this, doubt gnawed at her. Would they believe her story? Or would they accuse her of stealing? Rumors told of how the wealthy family had encountered countless unscrupulous people. But the thought of not trying at all was unthinkable. She wouldn't be able to sleep under the weight of uncertainty. That night, as Easter Sunday gave way to the hush of late evening, Elena found no rest. She kept glancing at the wallet on her coffee table, half expecting it to vanish or for the phone to ring with a frantic voice demanding it back. She felt something stirring deep inside her, a mix of apprehension and determination. For so long, life had been about survival, about paying overdue bills and facing her modest reality with measured resignation. Now destiny seemed to have placed a twist in her path. Little did she know how deeply it would change her future and her heart. When dawn broke, Elena was already awake, dressed in a simple blouse and comfortable shoes for the trek. She slipped the wallet into her best handbag, one of the few nice accessories she owned, and hurried to catch the first bus out of town. The day was cool and fresh, with dew sparkling on every blade of grass. Passing farmland and quiet streets, her mind raced. How would Julian react? Would she be met by a team of guards, a suspicious butler demanding answers? Perhaps Julian wouldn't even be at home. 30 minutes later, Elena found herself at the crest of a winding private road lined with towering oaks. A pristine iron gate blocked the driveway. She approached with trembling hands and pressed the call button set into a stone pillar. A crackle of static sounded before a man's voice inquired who she was. Elena introduced herself, stammering slightly as she explained she'd found a wallet belonging to Mr. Julian Blackwell and had come to return it. The gate slid open with a groan that seemed to echo among the tree trunks, and Elena stepped forward, her heart hammering. She had never been this close to the famous Blackwell estate. The grounds were vast, with manicured lawns, flower gardens, and a fountain that sparkled under the morning sun. The house itself was an impressive colonial-style mansion, its facade adorned with tall white columns. Her feet hesitated on the gravel driveway. A staff member wearing a neat uniform emerged from a side entrance, waiting to greet her with a formal nod. He beckoned for her to follow. Elena's mouth went dry. As she walked across the polished marble floors of the mansion's foyer, she nearly forgot to breathe. A mixture of intimidation and curiosity swept through her. She noticed paintings on the walls, famous artists, no doubt, exotic flower arrangements on antique tables and corridors that seemed to stretch endlessly. At last, she was led to a sunlit sitting room with large windows overlooking the gardens, and there, looking just as handsome as the photograph, if not more, stood Julian Blackwell himself. He turned the moment they stepped in, and his eyes fell on her, curiosity and relief mingling in his gaze. Elena felt words fail her for a moment. She clutched the wallet in her hand, heartbeat thrumming in her ears. Never in her modest life had she expected to stand face to face with someone of such stature, let alone under these circumstances. Before she could speak, Julian gently motioned for the staff member to leave them, and so the meeting began, one that would change both their lives forever. Elena swallowed hard, summoning every ounce of courage to steady her trembling hands. At first glance, Julian Blackwell seemed more an apparition than a real man. His presence was as commanding as the mansion he inhabited. Tall, confident, striking features that caught the sunlight filtering through the tall windows. Beneath that poised exterior, Elena noticed signs of relief in his eyes, as if some inner tension had been lifted the moment she arrived. "Miss Dixon?" Julian asked, his voice low and polite, betraying only the faintest trace of excitement. He gestured for her to be seated in one of the upholstered chairs beside a marble-topped coffee table. Though the invitation was gentle, Elena's heart pounded, and she wondered if he could hear it in the hush of the room. She nodded and carefully handed him the brown leather wallet. "Yes, I'm Elena Dixon," she managed. "I found your wallet under the old oak tree by the plaza during the Easter gathering. I hope nothing is missing." Julian exhaled as if he'd been holding his breath for days. He opened the wallet, did a quick check of the contents, then paused on the small photograph tucked into a side pocket. Elena noticed a flicker of emotion cross his features. Gratitude, perhaps relief. He pressed the wallet shut and placed it on the table between them, turning his full attention to her. "I don't know how to thank you," he said quietly. "This wallet, it isn't just about cards or money. Inside are personal items I value. Truly, thank you for coming all this way." Elena mustered a nervous smile, her cheeks warming. The shining floors, the grand paintings, and the subtle sense that everything here dripped with wealth made her feel conspicuously out of place. I was worried about it all night," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't want to hand it off to anyone else and risk it being lost or stolen." Julian's expression softened. "You've gone to a great deal of trouble. It can't have been easy finding the time or transport to get here." He stood, crossing to a side table where a small silver tray held a pitcher of water and crystal glasses. "Please let me offer you something to drink. It's the least I can do." She nodded, her anxiety easing as she saw kindness in his gestures. He poured 2 glasses of water, handed one to her, and resumed his seat. The hush of the room and the gentle click of the air conditioning reminded her that outside these walls the world bustled with holiday festivities, but here felt remarkably still, almost intimate. Elena noticed new details about him, the crisp line of his tailored shirt, the way he carried himself as though used to attention but not particularly fond of it. She also saw a slight bruise on his wrist, partially covered by his shirt cuff. She wanted to ask about it but hesitated. How personal could she be with a man she'd only just met? Julian cleared his throat. "I'm sure you're thinking it's odd that I lost my wallet at the plaza." He paused, swirling the water in his glass. "Honestly, I rarely visit that side of town, but my mother insisted we make a public appearance for the Easter event. I must have dropped it while greeting people or rummaging for donation envelopes." A wry smile flitted across his face. "I didn't even realize it was missing until later in the afternoon, and by then the crowd had gone." Elena listened, nodding. She guessed that living in such privilege must come with a fair share of obligations. Appear here, shake hands there, wave politely, even on a holiday. "I'm glad I found it," she said, "and that I was able to get it back to you." He leaned forward, voice earnest. "So am I. If you'd turned it into someone else, who knows what might have happened? You've done more than you realize." His words were simple, yet the depth in his gaze made Elena's heart flutter. She felt the warmth in her chest turn into a sweet, nervous pounding as he looked at her. She quickly dropped her eyes to her lap, reminding herself that this was, after all, a formal situation. She was here only to return a wallet, nothing more. Yet the moment threatened to stretch into something else. They both felt it. Before the quiet could become too heavy, a polite knock sounded at the door. A staff member stepped in, offering an apology for the interruption. She informed Julian that a business associate was calling, requesting an urgent conversation. Julian's jaw tensed slightly, but he thanked the staff member and asked her to relay that he'd call back soon. As the staff member left, Julian turned back to Elena, looking torn. "I'm sorry. Business never seems to sleep, not even on a holiday. But I don't want to rush you away. I'd like to properly thank you." "It's all right," Elena said softly, standing. She set the half-finished glass of water on the table. "You don't owe me anything. I'm just happy I could help. Besides, I need to catch the next bus home." Julian stood as well, his expression briefly clouding with disappointment. "At least let me have my driver take you back so you don't have to wait for the bus. It's the least I can offer." She hesitated, glancing toward the window where, beyond the manicured garden, the tree-lined driveway curved into the distance. It would certainly be convenient, much faster than waiting at the bus station, but she feared it might feel too much like accepting something she shouldn't. How often had she heard rumors of wealthy benefactors performing grand gestures that left recipients feeling indebted? "Please," Julian continued gently, as though reading her mind, "it's only transportation. You'd be doing me a favor. Otherwise, I'll worry you had trouble getting home." Elena smiled at that. There was sincerity in his tone that put her more at ease. "All right, thank you." That's very kind." He nodded, relief washing over his features. Before leading her out, he picked up a fountain pen from a nearby desk, then scribbled something on a small card. "This is my personal cell number," he said, extending the slip of paper to her. "If you ever need anything, truly anything, please call, and if you don't mind, I'd like to check in soon and see that you're doing well." She felt the slip of paper in her hand, the letters of his phone number standing out clearly. It was such a simple object, yet it felt momentous. "Sure," she murmured, unsure of what else to say. "Thank you, Mr. Blackwell." "Julian," he corrected, a gentle smile curving his lips. "Just Julian." They left the sitting room, and the staff member who had greeted her earlier appeared to escort them outside. Elena felt a tiny flicker of pride that she hadn't made a fool of herself. At least, she hoped not. Pausing at the threshold, she saw the mansion's grandeur in a fresh light. She might never stand in these halls again, but for a brief moment, she had glimpsed a realm far removed from her everyday life. Outside, a sleek black sedan pulled up. Elena's eyes widened slightly at the immaculate vehicle, a driver stepping out in crisp uniform. Julian opened the car's rear door for her himself, a gesture so unexpected that her cheeks warmed anew. "Have a good rest of your Easter," he said softly, "and thank you again for everything." She slid onto the seat, the interior smelling faintly of leather and polish. The door closed, separating her from Julian's steady gaze. Through the tinted window, she saw him step back. Her heart fluttered oddly, as though part of her regretted leaving so soon. Then the driver started the engine, and the mansion slipped behind the foliage of the long driveway. During the ride, Elena found her reflection in the tinted glass. She hardly recognized the flush on her cheeks or the new, nervous energy in her eyes. Carefully, she slipped the small piece of paper with Julian's number into her handbag, next to the modest wallet that held her own scraps of bills. By the time the sedan arrived at her modest apartment complex, Elena's thoughts swirled with doubts and possibilities. She thanked the driver, accepted a polite tip of the hat from him, and climbed out onto the sidewalk. As the car eased away, she sensed that she had crossed some invisible threshold between the quiet struggle she'd always known and a future she couldn't yet define. Entering her apartment, Elena felt the difference immediately. The hush was the same as always, the second-hand furniture as worn as ever, yet she stood there brimming with a flicker of excitement she couldn't tamp down. She had never sought an escape from her life, not truly, but now her mind lingered on Julian's smile and the open kindness in his eyes. She wondered if that fleeting moment of connection was real or merely a spark conjured by the thrill of returning something valuable. Pushing the thought aside, she decided a cup of tea might calm her. Sitting at her small kitchen table, she replayed the conversation again and again, always returning to the same detail. Julian had given her his personal number. He hadn't needed to. He could have dismissed her with a simple "thank you." But he wanted to stay in touch. Her phone, an older model, lay silent on the table's edge. She glanced at the scruffy device and considered sending a quick text, just a polite reassurance that she'd made it home. But it felt too soon. Too forward. That evening, as the sun's last rays glowed through the worn curtains, Elena caught herself smiling without meaning to. She had spent years in patient survival, rarely daring to hope for more than paying off debts and living quietly. Yet in returning a lost wallet, she had stumbled into a moment that might open something new. And in the recesses of her heart, a gentle stirring took hold, one that spoke of possibilities, of a better tomorrow, of a connection that might cross the boundaries of class and circumstance. Elena didn't sleep well that night, despite her attempts to wind down with tea and a half-hearted effort to watch an old TV program. Every time she closed her eyes, images danced in her mind. The gleam of the Blackwell mansion, the soft way Julian had said, "Just Julian," and the slip of paper with his phone number. She woke multiple times, heart pounding, as though expecting a late-night knock at the door or a sudden ring of the phone that never came. By morning, the feeling hadn't faded. She rose early, habitual after years of working events at dawn, and busied herself with tidying her small apartment. She rearranged items in the kitchen cupboards and wiped the counters until they shone. It was, in many ways, a nervous release of energy, an attempt to distract herself from the lingering excitement and confusion swirling within her. Elena had never been the type to dwell on romantic fantasies. Her life had been too rooted in practical concerns, burying her parents, finishing their debts, and making ends meet by working late shifts at the catering hall. She'd had boyfriends in the distant past, but never anything serious. Most had drifted away once they realized the weight of responsibility she carried. Over time, she'd grown used to the idea that she might remain alone, forging her future in quiet determination. Yet the memory of Julian's warm smile, his gentle voice, and the gracious way he'd treated her so differently from how she'd imagined a wealthy man might treat someone with no social standing, those thoughts refused to leave her. She found herself pausing often, lost in reveries. The lavish foyer, the marble floors, the manicured hedges visible through the windows, and then Julian himself standing like someone out of a storybook, politely offering her a ride home in a polished black car. By mid-morning, she realized she had to get to the catering hall. There was a large wedding reception that evening, and she'd volunteered for a double shift. Putting aside her restless thoughts, she combed her hair into a simple ponytail, slipped into her plain work attire, and made her way to the bus stop. The everyday world greeted her with its usual clamor of engines, footsteps on the sidewalk, and a smattering of voices as neighbors discussed mundane tasks. She almost sighed in relief. This routine helped ground her in reality. On the bus, Elena tucked herself near a window, gazing at rows of small shops and narrow streets rolling by. An elderly woman took the seat next to her, grocery bags in hand. As the bus lurched forward, Elena's phone chimed unexpectedly. She nearly jumped, fumbling the device from her purse. A text message notification glowed on the screen. She felt her pulse quicken. "Good morning, Elena. This is Julian. I hope I'm not disturbing you. I just wanted to make sure you got home safely yesterday and to say thanks again." She stared at the screen, hardly believing it. Julian was texting her on a weekday morning after Easter, with no pressing reason except to check on her well-being. She typed back a careful response, rereading each word to ensure she didn't sound too eager or too dismissive. "Good morning, Julian. Thank you for asking. I arrived home safely, and I'm glad I was able to return your wallet. I hope you're well." Her thumb hovered over the send button for a moment, heart thudding. Then she pressed it. The bus rattled onward, a few passengers shifting in their seats. She couldn't remember the last time a simple text made her so anxious, so intrigued. When the phone vibrated again, she nearly dropped it. "I'm relieved to hear that. If you're free soon, I'd be honored to treat you to lunch or coffee, unless you feel that's too much. I truly just want to express my gratitude." Elena's cheeks warmed, though no one on the bus was paying the slightest attention to her. She realized how wild it seemed. A millionaire was offering to meet her for lunch. She typed a reply. "That's thoughtful of you. I'm working double shifts this week, but maybe we can meet on my day off. Thursday?" She added a polite, smiley face at the end, immediately second-guessing whether that was too informal. But it was sent before she could change her mind. The phone stayed silent for a few minutes, and in that time she switched buses, heading downtown toward the catering hall. When she finally heard the chime again, she paused on the sidewalk to read it. "Thursday works perfectly. Let me know what time is best and I'll arrange everything. Looking forward to it." He'd texted, "Looking forward to it." The simple phrase made Elena's stomach flip with nervous excitement. In a daze, she slipped the phone back into her purse. She didn't dare linger over every word while she was already running late for her shift. At the catering hall, the day passed in a blur of setting up tables, folding napkins, checking inventory, and instructing newer staff on the bride's color scheme. Elena was normally efficient, but her co-worker Teresa noticed something off about her. Elena seemed distracted, lost in thought whenever tasks slowed. "Everything okay?" Teresa asked, hooking an arm around Elena's shoulders while they took a quick break near the kitchen's coffee machine. "You've been wearing that faraway look ever since Easter." Elena hesitated, then decided Teresa was the only one she trusted with the truth. I found something at the Easter gathering and had to return it," she said carefully. Teresa's eyebrows rose. "Must have been important to have you all fluttery. What was it?" "A wallet," Elena admitted. "It belonged to Julian Blackwell." Her friend's jaw nearly dropped. "You're kidding! The same Blackwell who, runs all those charities, invests in half the city's new projects, that Blackwell?" "Yes." Elena told her the entire story, from finding the wallet beneath the old oak to her trip to the Blackwell mansion and the car ride home. By the end, Teresa's eyes shone with a mixture of awe and amusement. That's like something out of a romance novel. Goodness, you better be careful," Teresa teased gently, though her tone was only half in jest. "Wealthy guys come with a lot of baggage sometimes." Elena sighed. "I know, and it's not like I'm expecting anything. He was very kind, and now he wants to take me to lunch as a thank you." She tried to inject a casual shrug into the statement, but her pulse pounded too strongly for it to seem genuine. Teresa grinned. "Well, that's a start. Don't let your guard down, but also don't be too quick to push away something that might be good. If he's a decent man, who knows what could happen?" They returned to their tasks, but Elena carried that conversation in her mind, replaying Teresa's words while scrubbing wine glasses and double-checking the dessert table. By the end of the double shift, her feet throbbed and her body ached, but a curious excitement lingered beneath the exhaustion. She worked for the next few days, too busy to dwell for long on the impending lunch. Julian texted her once more, confirming the day and asking if noon suited her. Feeling both dread and anticipation, she replied, yes. Each time her phone chimed after that, her heart leapt, but often it was only a reminder of her schedule or a quick note from Teresa. Finally, Thursday arrived. Elena woke early, rummaging through her closet for something suitable to wear. She owned mostly comfortable work clothes, black slacks, plain blouses. Her nicer dresses were either outdated or saved for holiday parties. She settled on a simple navy sundress that had survived since her late teens, astonished it still fit well enough, though it hugged her figure a bit more closely than she remembered. Her reflection in the small mirror above her dresser showed a woman with large, nervous eyes, hair pinned back in a gentle twist. She seldom wore makeup, but today she applied a faint sweep of blush and some mascara. A wave of embarrassment washed over her. Was she overdressed? Underdressed? She couldn't know what sort of place Julian would pick. The idea of stepping into a high-end restaurant among wealthy patrons nearly made her want to hide under her sheets. Shortly before noon, the doorbell to her apartment buzzed. Her breath caught. She moved to the door, half expecting to see a messenger or a note saying plans had changed. Instead, she found Julian himself standing in the hallway, wearing a casual blazer over a crisp shirt, looking more approachable than she'd ever seen him. No driver, no entourage. Just him, carrying a bouquet of fresh lilies and a slightly shy smile. "Elena," he said with quiet warmth, "I thought I'd pick you up myself, if that's all right. I wanted to show you a place I like downtown." She nearly lost her composure. The building's hallway was so cramped that Julian's presence seemed to fill it, and the fragrance of the lilies mingled with the faint smell of coffee from a neighbor's door. "Yes, that's kind of you," she managed. He held out the bouquet. "These are for you. I didn't know if you liked flowers, but these seemed elegant and gentle." She accepted them, cheeks flushed. "They're beautiful. Thank you." Pulling her door closed, she locked up and carefully set the bouquet on the console table near the entrance before turning back to him. There was a glimmer of surprise in Julian's eyes as he took in her simple apartment hallway, the peeling paint, the overhead light that flickered. But if he judged it, he gave no sign. Instead, he offered his arm, and she let him guide her toward the stairwell. Down on the street, a discreet sedan was parked. Not the fancy black one with a chauffeur, but something more understated, silver, well kept, but not ostentatious. Julian opened the passenger door for her. Grateful for the gesture, she slid inside, inhaling the faint scent of polished leather. He circled around to the driver's seat, started the engine, and pulled away. They chatted with mild, polite conversation, discussing the gorgeous weather and how the city always buzzed when a new season began. Soon, he steered them into a lively downtown area. Elena noticed the shift in atmosphere, from quiet residential blocks to bustling streets filled with cafes, shops, and colorful awnings. Finally, Julian parked near a quaint building with ivy climbing its brick walls. A sign overhead read, "Vera's Garden Cafe." They stepped inside to the sound of soft, instrumental music and the scent of fresh herbs. Potted plants lined the windows, and sunlight poured in through the glass, giving the space a serene glow. The hostess recognized Julian and greeted him with friendly familiarity, leading them to a table by the large window. Everything about the cafe felt intimate and welcoming. Elena slid onto a chair, pulse fluttering. She found herself scanning the other diners, some in business attire, others casually dressed. No one seemed to pay them undue attention, which brought her some relief. Julian took the seat opposite, and for a moment they simply smiled, an unspoken gratitude passing between them. He nodded to a waiter who brought water and menus. "I come here whenever I need a moment away from the family business," Julian explained, voice warm. "The owners are old friends. They make the best rosemary bread and grilled vegetables in the city." She glanced at the menu, noting that prices were high, at least by her standards, but not exorbitant. Her nerves refused to settle, even though the atmosphere was relaxed. She wanted to appear at ease, though she suspected Julian saw right through her attempts. "Order whatever you like," he said gently. "I'm just happy you agreed to meet me." Her eyes flicked up to his. "I'm the one who's grateful. You didn't have to do this. Honestly, returning your wallet was just, well, the right thing to do?" He gave a thoughtful nod, setting the menu aside. "It was. And you could have kept it, or thrown it out, or turned it in to the police without a second thought. But you went out of your way to bring it to me. I needed to show you that it means more than a quick thank you." A glint entered his gaze. "Besides, it gave me an excuse to see you again." Elena's heart thudded. She ran her fingers along the edge of the menu, trying to maintain composure. Before she could reply, the waiter returned with a basket of fresh bread and a small dish of herbed butter. Julian gestured for her to try it. She took a piece of bread, still warm, steam rising as she pulled it apart. The flavors melted on her tongue, mingling perfectly with the butter's subtle garlic. She sighed, forgetting her nerves for just a moment. "It's wonderful," she murmured. Julian smiled. "Told you." They both took a moment to savor the bread before ordering their meals. Elena chose a light rosemary chicken dish, partly because it sounded delicious, partly because it wasn't the most expensive option. She couldn't quite shake her awareness of money. Julian opted for grilled salmon and a bright vegetable medley. As they waited, conversation began to flow more naturally. Julian asked about her work, her life, her interests. Though she was initially hesitant, Elena found herself opening up, sharing small anecdotes about learning to cook from her mother, her late father's love of old swing music, and how she'd ended up at the catering hall. Julian listened intently, occasionally asking questions that showed genuine interest. She, in turn, asked about his philanthropic work, careful not to pry too deep. He mentioned a scholarship fund he'd started with his brother, the countless public events he was obligated to attend, and a personal project to renovate sections of the local hospital. Elena caught glimpses of a man who, though privileged, seemed sincere in using his influence to help others, far removed from the haughty stereotypes she'd once associated with the wealthy. Their food arrived. Conversation paused while they sampled the dishes and found them to be every bit as good as the cafe's reputation promised. For Elena, each bite felt like a small luxury, a reminder that her life, for one afternoon, had stepped outside its usual boundaries. By the time plates were cleared, a gentle warmth spread in Elena's chest, not only from the meal but from the easy conversation, from the kindness in Julian's eyes. She found herself smiling without effort, discovering that he had a gentle humor that surfaced whenever she teased him about his philanthropic schedule. When at last the bill arrived, Julian quietly took care of it, and she didn't argue. She knew it would be in vain. As they stood to leave, he placed a hand lightly on her elbow, guiding her toward the door with care. She felt a sense of comfort that surprised her, as though spending time with him were the most natural thing in the world. Yet a question nagged at the back of her mind. Was this an afternoon's courtesy, or the start of something with deeper meaning? She tried to silence her doubts, reminding herself to live in the moment. They stepped back into the bright midday sunlight. The city's bustle had picked up. Traffic moved along the road and people walked with purpose, carrying shopping bags or hurrying back to the office. Julian turned to her with a look that bordered on shy. I hope this won't be the last time we do this," he said quietly. "I know we come from very different worlds, but talking with you feels refreshing. Real." Elena's cheeks colored softly. "I'd like that," she found herself replying. "I mean, I don't mind having a new friend, even if he's—" She almost said, "a millionaire," but swallowed the phrase. "Someone with a busy schedule." He smiled, clearly catching her hesitation. I'll always try to make time for the things that matter." In that single statement, Elena sensed both an invitation and a promise. Unsure how to proceed, she said nothing. The moment hung there between them, alive with possibility. Then, with mutual understanding, they walked back to his car. The day might still hold many uncertainties, but for now, the slow, blossoming warmth of a new connection was enough. The next few days passed in a gentle blur, each marked by small but meaningful exchanges between Elena and Julian. They continued to text, sharing casual updates about their routines. Elena would mention how she'd woken early to help unload supplies at the catering hall, while Julian would describe an early meeting at the hospital board or a fundraising brunch he had to attend. Their texts became a part of her day that she eagerly anticipated, a moment of warmth amid the usual grind of work. Elena's friend Teresa teased her mercilessly about it. "Look at you, grinning at your phone," she'd say whenever Elena paused mid-task to read a message from Julian. "If only you could see your face." Elena would laugh it off, but her cheeks often betrayed a flustered hue. Deep down, she felt the odd exhilaration of stepping inch by inch into a world where someone cared about her day, asked about her hopes, and seemed genuinely interested in what she had to say. Throughout this budding connection, Elena tried to keep a firm grasp on reality. After all, Julian was not just a kind-hearted man with a busy schedule. He was a Blackwell, heir to an empire of wealth and status. The lines that separated their backgrounds were dauntingly clear. She wasn't naive. She knew the glitter that surrounded him could become a barrier if she allowed her heart to run wild with daydreams. Still, that didn't stop a quiet spark of hope from brightening whenever she thought of his easy smile and the way he looked at her, as though she mattered as much as anyone else in his life. One morning, Julian called unexpectedly. Elena had just finished dressing for work and was double-checking her reflection in the mirror. Dark circles under her eyes from a late shift, hair in a tidy ponytail, when her phone rang. Upon seeing his name on the screen, her stomach did a little flip. "Elena? I hope I'm not calling too early," Julian said in a tone that was both polite and eager. "I was wondering if you might like to come to a charity event this Friday evening. It's for a local children's arts program and the fundraiser will be at the city's museum. If you're free, I'd love for you to be my guest." She nearly dropped her brush. Her immediate reaction was a startled intake of breath. "Me? At a black tie sort of event?" She glanced down at her reflection, wearing a simple blouse ready for another shift. "I'm not sure I'd fit in there." Julian's voice softened. "You don't have to worry about that. It won't be overly formal. Business casual, more or less. And you'd be in good company. My mother and some of the board members will be there, but mostly it's a lot of local supporters. The arts program benefits underprivileged kids who show talent in drawing, painting, and music. I promise you'll find it meaningful." She hesitated, her gaze drifting to the faint lines of worry on her forehead. "I'd love to support the arts, but are you sure it's okay for me to come? I'm not exactly accustomed to big fundraisers." Julian let out a low laugh. "That's precisely why I want you there. Fresh eyes, honest impressions. I can't keep surrounding myself with the same set of people. If you hate it, at least we can leave early and grab coffee." A small laugh escaped her lips. "Well, I can't argue with coffee. Let me check my schedule and see if I can swap shifts on Friday night. But yes, I'd like to come, if I can." He sounded pleased, which gave her a flutter of reassurance. "Wonderful. I'll text you the details." They ended the call and Elena leaned against her dresser, heart pounding. She'd never set foot in the city's museum for a gala or any kind of event. The thought of mixing with the so-called upper crust sent a jolt of nerves racing through her. Immediately she messaged Teresa. "He invited me to a museum fundraiser. Possibly fancy. I'm freaking out." Teresa's response arrived quickly. OMG, that's amazing! Don't freak out. This is the real world. You deserve to be there as much as anyone. We'll find you something to wear." A trickle of warmth spread through Elena as she read the text. She realized that deep inside, beyond the anxiety, there was excitement at the prospect of spending an evening with Julian and seeing a piece of his world firsthand. That evening, once their shifts ended, Teresa whisked Elena away to a modest shopping district. The two rummaged through racks of discounted dresses and second-hand boutiques, searching for something that would suit an arts fundraiser but not break Elena's limited budget. Teresa insisted on a style that highlighted Elena's figure without feeling too provocative, something that would let her blend in at a sophisticated event while still feeling comfortable in her own skin. They eventually found a knee-length dress in slate blue satin with a subtle neckline and short sleeves. Elena wasn't entirely convinced. It felt more elegant than anything she'd ever worn, but Teresa's enthusiastic nod and the reflection in the changing room mirror showed her a glimpse of a woman who could walk confidently at a social gathering. The price tag made her exhale with relief. It was on clearance due to a minor stitching defect, easily hidden under the side seam. With a new pair of modest heels, she'd be set. Back at home, Elena tried on the outfit again. She stepped slowly in front of her mirror, taking in how the fabric caught the light, how the cut complemented her shoulders. Quietly, she imagined stepping into that museum hall on Julian's arm. The thought both thrilled and terrified her. Friday arrived in a whirlwind of final preparations. Elena managed to swap her shift so she had the evening free. Nerves jangled in her stomach all day. Once the clock hit 4 in the afternoon, she rushed home to freshen up. She curled her hair in soft waves and pinned a small portion back with a hair clip, the same one she'd worn to her high school graduation. A touch of subtle makeup followed. Light foundation, a hint of rose on her cheeks, and a delicate gloss for her lips. She was just slipping into her heels when her phone buzzed with a text from Julian. "I'm downstairs whenever you're ready. Take your time." Her heart thudded. He was already waiting. Carefully, she picked up a small black clutch that Teresa had lent her for the occasion, double-checked she had her keys and phone, and then stepped out. In the lobby of her modest apartment building, she found Julian standing near the mailboxes, looking impossibly polished in a tailored navy blazer, crisp white shirt, and slacks. It felt surreal seeing him under the dim fluorescent lights and chipped paint of the hallway, but he greeted her with an affectionate smile, eyes lighting up when he saw her dress. "You look wonderful," he said softly, offering his arm. She couldn't help the little smile tugging at her lips at how earnest he seemed. "So do you," she replied, letting him lead her outside. The evening air was warm, the sky streaked with dusky oranges. A car waited at the curb. This time, it was a more refined vehicle, and a driver stepped forward to open the rear door. Elena slid in, smoothing the satin of her skirt, while Julian joined her on the other side. He seemed perceptive to her anxiety, for he kept the conversation light during the drive, telling her anecdotes about the museum's architecture and the local children's program. By the time they arrived, Elena felt a measure of calm. The museum, a grand old building with Doric columns, was lit up against the twilight. Groups of people in elegant attire were already milling about at the entrance, stepping onto a plush red carpet that led inside. Elena's pulse hammered at the sight. She could almost see the dividing line between her usual life and this glitzy occasion, but Julian caught her eye and squeezed her hand gently. "Ready?" She nodded, inhaling a steadying breath. Arm in arm, they climbed the stone steps and entered the museum's main atrium. The transformation was breathtaking. Classical statues rose along the walls, illuminated by soft spotlights. Tables draped in linen showcased silent auction items, framed paintings, handcrafted sculptures, even a private music lesson with a famed violinist. Waiters glided about with trays of sparkling water and hors d'oeuvres. A swirl of chatter filled the air, polite laughter, exclamations over the items, occasional bursts of applause for the young artists whose works were on display. Elena followed Julian through the crowd, grateful that he didn't rush her introductions. She caught glimpses of pastel watercolors and vibrant abstract pieces pinned to display boards. Nearby, a teenage girl with charcoal-stained fingers explained her technique to a small group of onlookers. It struck Elena as profoundly moving. Children who would never have had a chance to develop their talents, now proudly showing their creations to well-dressed art patrons. Julian guided Elena toward a broad table where a hostess handed out pamphlets detailing the evening's agenda. He leaned in to murmur, "They're awarding scholarships tonight to the students who've shown the most promise. It'll mean access to better art supplies, possibly funding to attend specialized camps or classes. One of the reasons I support this group is because I remember what it's like to need someone's belief in you." She looked at him curiously. "But your family was never short on resources," she said gently. A flicker of something, maybe sadness or regret, crossed his eyes. "That's true. But resources don't always translate to understanding. My father was strict about business and economics. He never saw the value in artistic pursuits. It took me years to find my own footing. Money isn't always the answer if there's no genuine support." Before she could probe further, someone called Julian's name. A middle-aged man in a tailored suit approached, smiling broadly. They shook hands, exchanging pleasantries about the event's turnout. The man's gaze shifted briefly to Elena, polite curiosity evident in the tilt of his head. Julian smoothly introduced her as a friend, and the gentleman nodded in welcome, though Elena saw the faint flicker of surprise before he offered her a genial smile. As they moved on, she whispered, "He seemed taken aback." Julian's mouth curved wryly. "He's used to seeing me with family members or business partners at events like these. Don't worry, no one will ask questions, at least not to your face." They reached a quieter section of the gallery where smaller sculptures rested on pedestals. Elena paused to admire a piece, a graceful figure carved from driftwood, capturing the image of a dancer in mid-twirl. The label indicated it was created by a 17-year-old. The swirling lines and delicate balance of the arms and skirt made Elena's heart swell with admiration. "Beautiful," she murmured. Julian nodded. "It is. And it's a testament to what programs like this can nurture." Another wave of arrivals passed by, some greeting Julian with respectful nods. Others offered quick conversations about future projects or the need for additional sponsors. Elena felt momentarily invisible, overshadowed by the swirl of wealth and connections. But then she felt Julian's hand settle lightly at the small of her back, a subtle anchor reminding her that she belonged at his side. She stood a little straighter. A petite woman with a refined bearing approached, dressed in a silver shawl. Her hair was elegantly swept into a low chignon, and her eyes bore a resemblance to Julian's, a deep, focused quality. Elena's stomach knotted as she realized who she must be. "Mother?" Julian greeted warmly, leaning in to press a kiss to the older woman's cheek. "I want you to meet my friend, Elena Dixon. Elena, this is my mother, Beatrice Blackwell." So this was Beatrice Blackwell, the matriarch of the philanthropic empire. Elena extended her hand, forcing a polite smile. "It's very nice to meet you, Mrs. Blackwell." Mrs. Blackwell's gaze was measured but not unfriendly. "Likewise, my dear. I understand you're Julian's guest tonight. I hope you're enjoying the art." Elena nodded. "Very much so. It's amazing to see such talent." The older woman regarded her for a moment, as though weighing Elena's sincerity. Then she nodded, a small smile curving her lips. "I agree. Julian and I have been supporting this program for some time, and it's always a delight to watch young artists flourish. I trust he's giving you a proper tour." She shifted her attention back to Julian, and they exchanged a few words about the charity's fundraising goals. Elena stood quietly, uncertain when to join the conversation. Yet she felt a flicker of relief that Mrs. Blackwell seemed cordial, if a bit reserved. The woman didn't question Elena's presence openly, nor did she exhibit any obvious condescension. After a few minutes, Beatrice excused herself to greet other guests, leaving Elena to exhale the breath she'd been holding. Julian offered her a soft chuckle. "You survived your first meeting with my mother. Are you all right?" Elena mustered a grin. "I think so." She felt the tension ebb slightly. She was polite. That's good, right? He nodded, a glint of amusement in his eyes. Better than good. If she was truly displeased, she'd have found a graceful excuse to usher me away. A server passed by with a tray of sparkling water, and Julian snagged 2 glasses, handing one to Elena. She sipped it, noticing how her nerves were settling into a low hum. The hum was no longer pure fear, but rather a sense that she was crossing a threshold into a place where she didn't entirely belong, yet was being gently welcomed, at least, by Julian. The lights dimmed slightly, drawing everyone's attention to a small stage erected at the far side of the atrium. The evening's host took the microphone, announcing that the scholarship presentations would begin. People gathered around, forming a respectful semicircle. Julian guided Elena closer, so they had a clear view of the stage. In that moment, while applause broke out to honor the first young artist, Elena looked up at Julian beside her. The subtle glow of the stage lighting revealed an intensity in his expression, a mixture of pride in the artists and a private contentment at standing with her, as though for all the differences in their worlds he was simply glad she was there to share this night. Applause rippled through the museum's atrium as a shy 14-year-old boy named Marco stepped forward on stage, clutching a small painting in vivid acrylics. The artwork depicted a summer sunrise over the city skyline, a swirl of golds and pinks. A hush fell as the event's host praised his technique and announced that Marco would receive a scholarship for an advanced art workshop. The boy's cheeks flamed with excitement, his smile bright enough to eclipse the stage lights. Elena found herself clapping enthusiastically, forgetting for a moment that she was surrounded by unfamiliar faces. Warmth filled her chest as she glanced at Julian, who applauded with quiet pride. One by one, young artists stepped up, a high schooler who'd sculpted elaborate clay figures, a 15-year-old violin prodigy who later planned to perform, an aspiring photographer whose landscapes already looked professional. Each child beamed with gratitude as scholarship certificates were handed out. "They're so talented," Elena whispered to Julian, leaning in close to be heard over the applause. He nodded, eyes shining. "They just need a chance, that's all. Moments like this can change everything for them." His sincerity tugged at Elena's heart. She recalled how her own life might have been different if there had been someone to nurture her talents when she was young. She wasn't sure what her passion might have been, music, writing, or something else. Instead, she'd had to grow up fast, stepping into work and responsibility. Watching these kids receiving well-deserved support stirred both admiration and a tiny pinch of longing. As the ceremony wrapped up, the host thanked all the benefactors and encouraged guests to continue mingling, enjoy refreshments, and consider bidding on the silent auction. People drifted into smaller clusters, chatting amiably. Elena noticed Mrs. Blackwell among several board members, looking thoroughly in her element. Julian turned to her, a gentle smile in place. "Hungry? They usually have light bites set up in the next gallery." She exhaled a breathy laugh. "Yes, please, I've been so nervous I forgot to eat dinner." His expression reflected genuine concern. "We can fix that." Taking her by the hand, a touch so natural and undramatic that Elena's heart gave a little jump, he guided her to a room where round tables were elegantly arranged with white linens. In the center stood a long buffet showcasing an array of bite-sized delicacies, smoked salmon canapes, miniature quiches, fruit tarts, and more. The aroma made Elena's mouth water. A waiter glided by, offering champagne. Julian declined for both of them, glancing at Elena for confirmation. When she nodded agreement, her stomach was already fluttery enough, he requested sparkling water instead. Together they selected small plates and ventured along the buffet, sampling and chatting about the creative plating. His presence soothed her nerves. Whenever she struggled to identify a dish, he'd point out its ingredients with a casual knowledge that hinted at how many such events he'd attended over the years. They found a tall bistro table at the perimeter of the gallery and stood side by side. Elena nibbled on a crisp pastry while Julian took a moment to greet one or two passers-by who recognized him. She started to relax, realizing that not everyone here was staring at her. In fact, most people were absorbed in conversation or admiring the art displays. Suddenly, a familiar voice called out, "Julian!" From behind them approached a young man with carefully combed hair and a stylishly slim tuxedo. He appeared close to Julian's age, though slightly shorter, with an energetic gaze. Julian offered him a warm handshake. "Ryan, good to see you here." Ryan's eyes flicked to Elena with curiosity. She returned his polite smile. "And who might this be?" he asked smoothly. Julian's tone was relaxed. "Elena Dixon, Ryan Tremont. We went to college together." Ryan bowed his head, extending a hand toward Elena. "Pleasure to meet you. Any friend of Julian's is a friend of mine." He flashed a grin, but there was a hint of probing in his eyes. Something about it made Elena wonder if he was already mentally cataloging her place in Julian's life. She shook his hand. "Nice to meet you too." Ryan turned back to Julian. "Heard your mother mention something about a new scholarship initiative. You never fail to add more to your plate." Julian shrugged, though a twinge of pride crept into his expression. "I do what I can. There's always more to be done." "True," Ryan said, nodding. Then, with a quick glance at Elena's dress, he smiled politely. "So, how do you two know each other?" The question felt charged, though posed casually. Elena's mind flashed back to the day she found Julian's wallet. It was such an unlikely beginning. She hesitated, glancing at Julian to gauge what he might say. He smoothly stepped in. "Elena and I met by chance. She did me a very big favor, and we've been friends since." Friends. The word felt at once comforting and uncertain. She managed a small nod, trying not to appear flustered. Ryan's eyebrows rose, but he nodded as if filing the information away. A moment later, he excused himself, citing a need to chat with another acquaintance about a potential donation. Julian exhaled quietly as he left, turning back to Elena with a faint apologetic shrug. "Ryan's not a bad guy, but he can be nosy." She mustered a gentle laugh. "He's probably just curious. I'm sure people are used to seeing you come to these events with, well, different company." A shadow of something, maybe regret, flickered in Julian's eyes. "Some people expect certain things from me," he acknowledged, "like never stepping out of a carefully curated circle, but I'm too old to chase anyone else's idea of perfection. And you? I want you to feel comfortable around me." Warmth spread through her chest. Before she could respond, a gentle clinking rang out. A man in a tuxedo tapped the side of a crystal flute, drawing everyone's attention. He introduced himself as one of the program's directors and invited guests to the front of the gallery for a live painting demonstration. Intrigued, Elena and Julian drifted that way, weaving through the small crowd. A teenage girl stood before a large blank canvas, her brush poised. Soft, classical music began to play. With deft strokes, she laid down an underpainting in broad swaths of color. The watching crowd murmured in appreciation as, slowly, a scene took form. Two dancers caught in mid-step, one with arms gracefully extended, the other leaning forward in a gentle curve. The artist worked confidently, layering colors that blended in mesmerizing patterns. Elena felt a lump in her throat. She'd never witnessed art forming in real time like this, the transformation from a blank space to a vivid expression. Julian's hand brushed hers, and when she turned, she saw the quiet awe in his eyes mirrored her own. When the demonstration ended, thunderous applause reverberated through the hall. Some guests began placing bids on the newly created painting. Elena overheard a woman in pearls exclaiming that it would look perfect in her sunroom. Others congratulated the young painter, who blushed and thanked them politely. Just then, a discreet staff member approached Julian. She bent forward and whispered something, and he nodded, brows furrowing slightly. After she withdrew, he turned to Elena with an apologetic expression. "I'm sorry. I need to step away for a moment. There's something about the auction finances they want me to clarify. Will you be all right if I leave you for a bit?" She smiled, feeling oddly proud that he'd ask. "I'll be fine. I'll just wander and look at more of the artwork. Take your time." Julian squeezed her hand gratefully, then slipped away. Left alone, Elena drifted through the gallery, pausing to admire sketches pinned to a board. Charcoal portraits of everyday people, their expressions captured with startling intimacy. On a nearby table lay pamphlets detailing the art program's mission. She picked one up, reading about how many of these kids came from difficult circumstances: single-parent households, foster care, low-income communities. The program gave them supplies, mentorship, and a place to let their creativity unfold. Emotion knotted in Elena's chest. She could see herself in these children's stories, struggling with finances, fighting each month's rent, clinging to the little hope that something good might emerge. Though she'd never been an artist, the idea of someone believing in her the way these donors believed in the kids struck a deep chord. She felt the weight of tears behind her eyes, though she fought to keep them at bay. "Heartwarming, isn't it?" came a refined female voice from her left. Turning, Elena saw Beatrice Blackwell, Julian's mother, stepping closer. Gone was the swirl of board members. She stood alone now, a calm aura in the midst of the bustling crowd. "It is," Elena agreed, swallowing the lump in her throat. She carefully placed the pamphlet back on the table. "Programs like this mean the world to them." Beatrice nodded, a gentle light in her gaze. "Indeed. I've seen children from the toughest backgrounds blossom once they're given a chance to express themselves." She paused, then studied Elena with measured kindness. "You seem moved by it all." Elena tried to speak calmly, hoping her nerves didn't show. I know what it's like to not have many resources. It's beautiful that people are helping." For a moment, Beatrice's expression softened, revealing compassion beyond her polished exterior. "Julian mentioned you met in an unusual way. He didn't give details, but he seemed quite indebted." Elena offered a modest smile, carefully choosing her words. "I returned something he lost. Nothing too dramatic, but it mattered to him." Mrs. Blackwell tilted her head. "And so you've met a few times since?" "We have," Elena replied, summoning steady confidence. "He's very easy to talk to. I never expected him to be so down-to-earth." A faint curve of the older woman's lips hinted at agreement. "My son has his own way of doing things. I respect that about him, even if it deviates from the mold others might try to set." Her gaze flicked toward a statue across the room. "There are those in our social circle who cling tightly to appearances. Julian, however, believes in authenticity, in helping without fanfare. That's been both a blessing and a challenge for him." Elena listened closely, aware that these insights were personal. Did Beatrice approve of her son's choices, or was this a veiled warning? She couldn't be sure. "May I ask you something?" Mrs. Blackwell's voice lowered in a gentle tone. "What do you see in Julian that makes you comfortable here, in a setting so different from your own?" Elena's eyes widened. The question was direct, but not unkind. She mulled over her answer carefully. "He listens," she said at last, her voice soft. "Truly listens. Whenever I speak, it's like he values what I say. And that's rare for me, Mrs. Blackwell. People usually overlook someone in my position." For a long moment, Beatrice studied Elena. Then her shoulders seemed to relax. "I'm glad to hear it." She nodded as if concluding something privately. "You should know, he's had his share of heartbreak. The circles we move in can be harsh. Sometimes people come close for the wrong reasons. I only say this because I love him." Elena's pulse spiked. She felt an acute urge to reassure the older woman that she wasn't after money or status. Still, she spoke measuredly, voice quiet but firm. "He deserves someone genuine, someone who values him as a person, not his name. I don't pretend to know what the future holds, but I'm not here to use him." Beatrice held Elena's gaze and, after a moment, nodded. The corners of her mouth curved slightly, a sign of acceptance. "Thank you," she said. "It's good to know." Before Elena could respond, Julian reappeared, weaving his way through the crowd toward them. His shoulders relaxed in relief at seeing his mother and Elena talking calmly. "Sorry about that. Auction forms needed some last-minute corrections." He glanced between the two women. "Everything all right?" Beatrice offered a faint but genuine smile. "We were just discussing how extraordinary some of these young artists are. You've chosen well tonight, Julian. Elena seems quite appreciative of the cause." She placed a hand gently on his arm. "If you'll both excuse me, I have a board member to chat with." They said their polite farewells, and Mrs. Blackwell moved off. Julian exhaled a small laugh, turning to Elena. "I'm almost afraid to ask what she said." Elena gave him a reassuring smile. "She's proud of you, you know, and we just chatted about the program. Nothing too dramatic." She chose not to mention the more personal aspects of that exchange. Julian seemed to accept that, offering a relieved grin. "Well, good. I'd hate for her to have overwhelmed you. Now how about we look at the rest of the silent auction? I need to see if there's anything I want to bid on." They wandered around the exhibits, pausing every so often for Julian to scribble a bid on an item he found interesting. A children's collective mural, a handcrafted pottery set, even a series of music lessons he wanted to donate back to the program. Elena admired how each bid reflected genuine desire to uplift the cause rather than any showy attempt to impress onlookers. Amid the hum of casual chatter, the swirl of graceful attire, and the glow of track lighting on priceless artworks, Elena felt an odd sense of belonging creep in. Yes, she was out of her element. Yes, the environment was more lavish than anything in her normal life, but with Julian by her side, steadfast, attentive, it wasn't frightening. It was simply new. By the time the evening drew to a close, the museum's staff began ushering guests toward the exit, and the young artists received a standing ovation for their pieces. Elena and Julian retrieved their coats, well, his blazer for the mild spring air, and stepped out onto the museum's grand steps. A gentle breeze ruffled Elena's curls as she gazed at the city's lights twinkling against the night sky. "That was amazing," she said softly. "I'm so grateful you invited me." Julian's eyes were warm. "It meant a lot to share it with you." They stood there, momentarily basking in the afterglow of a successful fundraiser. Cars rolled past on the street below. Other attendees descended the steps, exchanging handshakes and good nights. Julian slipped an arm around Elena, guiding her carefully down the steps, then led her toward his car. As the driver held the door open, Julian paused. "Would you like to grab something warm to drink before I drop you home? Maybe hot chocolate or coffee?" The invitation held a note of hope, as though he didn't want the night to end. Elena, still heady with the emotions of the evening, managed a small grin. Hot chocolate sounds perfect. With that simple plan, they slid into the back seat, side by side, moving away from the bright lights of the museum. In the dim interior, Elena felt Julian's hand brush hers again. She turned to him, meeting his eyes in the near dark, and her breath caught at the sincerity she saw there. In that unspoken moment, she felt something shift, a delicate promise forming between them, shaped by understanding, kindness, and the spark of something that might soon be called love. Elena felt her heart flutter as the car slipped into the quieter side streets away from the museum. The city's bright glow fell behind them, replaced by the warm hush of nighttime neighborhoods. Street lamps cast pools of golden light on the sidewalk, where only a few late-night pedestrians strolled past shuttered boutiques. Julian suggested a cozy cafe he knew just a short drive away. The driver nodded, navigating through the winding roads with practiced ease. Sitting in the back seat side by side, Elena and Julian chatted softly. She was still buzzing with the excitement of the museum event, the sincerity of the young artists, the applause and admiration of donors, the gentle presence of Julian beside her the entire evening. He seemed equally affected, occasionally glancing her way with that gentle, steady warmth in his eyes. Before long, the car halted at a small corner cafe. Its windows glowed with a soft amber light, and a chalkboard by the entrance promised homemade pastries and a specialty hot chocolate. Perfect. They stepped out, thanking the driver, who remained discreetly behind in the car. A small bell jingled as Julian opened the door for Elena, letting her step in first. Inside, the cafe felt like a world away from the glitz of the fundraiser. A simple space with mismatched tables, hand-drawn menus, and a soft murmur of conversation. A few patrons sat hunched over laptops or sipped warm drinks while reading. The barista behind the counter flashed a tired but friendly smile. Elena inhaled the scent of roasted coffee beans and melted chocolate, letting it anchor her in the moment. Julian guided her to a corner table near the window. She shrugged off her light wrap and sank into a chair, grateful to rest her feet. He took the seat across from her, his blazer draped on the back of the chair. "Should I order for both of us?" he offered, noticing she seemed a bit drained. She smiled, nodding. "Yes, please. Hot chocolate for me, maybe with a splash of cinnamon if they have it." He rose to approach the counter. From her seat, she watched him chat with the barista. A short exchange, but Elena could see his characteristic politeness in the way he listened, nodded, then pulled out his wallet. Memories of the day she'd found that very wallet flickered in her mind. Everything that had happened since felt surreal. A chance discovery beneath an old oak tree leading her here, to a quiet cafe at night, sharing a moment with a man who made her heart quicken. Julian returned with 2 steaming mugs and placed one before her. "The barista said their cinnamon is top-notch. Hope you enjoy." He slid into his chair, cupping his own mug of coffee in both hands. "So," he said gently, "how was your first official charity gala experience?" Elena cradled her hot chocolate, savoring the warmth that spread through her fingers. "It was inspiring," she replied, letting the memory wash over her. "A little overwhelming at first, but I loved seeing those kids get recognized, and the museum itself is beautiful. I had no idea events like that could be so full of heart." A hint of pride touched Julian's features. People assume these gatherings are all about glamour, but at their best, they bring help where it's needed. Still, I know it can be a lot to take in. Some folks attend purely for social clout, but there are many who genuinely care. She nodded, taking a cautious sip of her drink. The chocolatey sweetness danced on her tongue. "I'm glad you invited me. I felt out of place at times, but you made it easier." He leaned forward slightly, eyes intent on her. "You didn't seem out of place to me. You were the most genuine person there." Then he chuckled. "Well, aside from the kids, of course, they have an honesty no adult can match." Elena returned his smile, warmth flooding her cheeks. "Your mother seems interesting," she ventured, her tone measured. "We spoke briefly." Julian's eyebrows lifted. "Did she say anything to worry you?" She considered how best to phrase it. She was protective, I think, but also polite. "I'm sure she wants to be sure you're not being taken advantage of." A rueful smile tugged at his lips. "Yes, that's one of her concerns. I can't blame her. We've had a few unpleasant incidents in the past, people who see the name Blackwell as a golden ticket." She's cautious. Elena nodded. "I understand. If she has questions about me, I won't hold it against her. She was civil enough. And maybe in time, we'll get to know each other better." She tried to keep her tone calm, but a spark of hope welled inside her. The mild acceptance from Julian's mother felt like a small victory. He reached across the table, his hand covering hers with a gentle press. "You're incredibly thoughtful. Most people meeting her either freeze up or try too hard to impress. I can see why she seemed at ease with you." Elena's gaze dropped to their joined hands. The cafe hum faded momentarily, as if this moment existed in a bubble just for them. A trickle of nerves blended with a budding joy, making her heart pound. "I still feel so new to all this," she admitted softly. "Sometimes I wonder if it's too big a gap between your world and mine." Julian's fingers tightened over hers. "If it ever feels like too much, tell me," he said, voice low and earnest. "But for what it's worth, I'm not living my life to stay in a gilded bubble. I want real experiences, honest connections. And that's what I feel when I'm with you." She swallowed hard, emotion rising in her chest. Words failed her, so she nodded, a shy smile curving her lips. "I'm glad," she finally managed, "because I feel that too." A gentle hush settled between them, filled with the warmth of the night air drifting in through the slightly open cafe door. Eventually, they sipped their drinks, the moment's intensity easing back to a comfortable hush. Elena glanced around, noticing a small bulletin board on the cafe wall, adverts for yoga classes, a missing cat poster, a flyer for a local open mic night. She found herself imagining how different her life might look if Julian became a constant presence. She pictured him dropping by the catering hall to see her, or her visiting his philanthropic events more regularly. Would that be a step too far? A wave of uncertainty mingled with cautious optimism. As if reading her thoughts, Julian said, "I want to introduce you to the rest of my family one day, my brother especially. He travels a lot, but he'd love you, I'm sure of it. But only when you're comfortable. No rush." Elena laughed, a tinge of disbelief in her voice. "Meeting more Blackwells. That's definitely another big step." He smiled. "One step at a time. Tonight was a good start." They spent another half hour in the cafe, swapping small stories about their youth, Julian reminiscing about an escapade in boarding school, Elena recounting the time she tried to save a stray dog as a kid. Each anecdote revealed something deeper, her compassionate streak, his quietly rebellious spirit. When at last the mugs were empty and the late hour pressed upon them, they decided it was time to head back. In the car, conversation lulled into a contented silence. Elena leaned her head back, letting the smooth motion of the ride lull her. The city lights streaked past the window in glowing trails of amber and white. Julian sat close, not quite touching but offering a comforting presence. She felt a strange mixture of calm and anticipation. They arrived at her apartment building, the driver rolling gently to a stop. Julian turned to her with a question in his eyes. "Would you like me to walk you up?" She hesitated, glancing at the dimly lit entrance. "I'll be okay. Thank you, though. It's late. I don't want to keep you." He seemed reluctant to let her go. "All right, but let me at least see you to the door." The driver stepped out to open Elena's door, and she thanked him softly. Julian followed, offering his arm as they crossed the sidewalk. She accepted it with an appreciative smile. At the building's entrance, a lone street lamp flickered overhead. She rummaged in her purse for her keys, then turned to him, feeling a sudden swirl of conflicting emotions. Longing, gratitude, and mild embarrassment at the worn look of the lobby visible through the glass door. "Thank you for tonight," she said softly. "It was wonderful. I've never experienced anything quite like it." His gaze was warm. "I should be thanking you. Events are better when I'm not alone." He paused, taking a half step closer. "May I call you tomorrow?" Her cheeks heated, but she nodded. "I'd like that." For a moment it seemed he might lean in, bridging the final inches between them in a soft kiss. The air felt charged, even in this modest doorway. Elena's breath caught, but instead he lifted her hand gently and pressed a light kiss to her knuckles, a gesture that sent a subtle thrill through her. Then he stepped back, smiling in a way that suggested he, too, felt that spark. "Good night, Elena," he said. "Good night, Julian." She slipped inside, heart pounding as she rode the creaking old elevator to her floor. Her apartment greeted her with quiet stillness, the faint hum of the refrigerator the only sound. Setting down her wrap and purse, she leaned against the door, eyes closed, replaying the final moments outside. The tenderness of his farewell echoed in her mind. Finally, she changed into comfortable pajamas and flipped on a small lamp by the couch. Sleep might be elusive. Her thoughts were too alive, swirling with the evening's impressions. The memory of the museum's spotlights, the hush of the hot chocolate cafe, Julian's gentle grip on her hand, they all lit her from the inside, dispelling any gloom that tried to creep in. A text message buzzed her phone, startling her. She picked it up, half expecting a note from Teresa, but it was from Julian. "I'm already missing your presence, but I'll let you rest. Sweet dreams." Elena pressed a hand to her chest, a soft laugh escaping. She typed back a quick reply, thanking him again and wishing him a good night, before placing the phone aside. She curled up on the couch, letting the warmth of possibility wrap around her like a blanket. Tomorrow would come with the usual responsibilities, but for now, she allowed herself a moment of happiness. It was as if life, for the first time in a long while, had opened a door and invited her to step beyond. She didn't know how this story would end, whether it would grow into something more or fizzle when reality's pressures closed in. But after an evening spent in shared wonder, Elena felt a quiet certainty that sometimes chance encounters were sparks meant to be followed. Over the next week, Elena walked through her days with an undercurrent of excitement she couldn't hide. At the catering hall, while folding linens or organizing place settings for banquets, she caught herself humming tunes she didn't even know she remembered. Teresa, ever watchful, teased her mercilessly. "Girl, you are glowing," she'd say, wagging her eyebrows. "That fancy gala must have done something good to your heart, huh?" Elena would roll her eyes and blush, unable to formulate much of a denial. Because truth be told, Julian had texted or called nearly every day since their museum evening, short chats that felt unexpectedly intimate. They discussed everything, from his upcoming board meetings to her sister's old cat that she still checked in on sometimes. Once he jokingly asked for her advice on how to salvage an overwatered houseplant. She teased that she was hardly an expert, but she loved that he thought to ask her. Some mornings she woke to a quick, "good morning" text that carried her through her shift with a secret smile. Other times she'd get a call just as she arrived home, and they'd talk until the sky turned dark, giggling over silly stories and trading off glimpses into each other's lives. It was comforting and thrilling in equal measure, but with that thrill came a flicker of worry each time she asked herself, could this really lead somewhere real? Was she, a cater waitress living in a humble apartment, truly ready to cross into Julian Blackwell's world? One evening, as Elena returned to her apartment, she discovered a small box waiting by her door. Her name was scrawled on the top in neat handwriting. Heart racing, she unlocked the door, stepped inside, and carefully set the package on her coffee table. She opened the lid to find a note in Julian's hand. "Wanted to brighten your day, J." Nestled in layers of tissue paper lay a simple silver bracelet adorned with tiny, delicate charms of stars and crescent moons. Her chest tightened. It wasn't ostentatious or overly expensive looking, just quietly elegant, something she could wear day to day. She ran her fingers over the smooth metal, speechless at the gesture. He called that night, moments after she found the gift. "I was worried it might not be your style," he confessed, sounding a bit nervous. "But it reminded me of you, subtle and luminous." Elena's voice trembled softly as she thanked him. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "I've never..." I don't usually get gifts like this." "I'm glad you like it," he said, relief and warmth threading through his voice. "I hoped you'd wear it sometimes and think of me." She pressed her lips together, suppressing a giddy grin. "I'll wear it all the time," she promised. Such moments buoyed her heart, making life feel undeniably brighter. At the same time, she couldn't ignore the quiet doubts that surfaced whenever she remembered how different her day-to-day was from his. Julian might attend a luxurious function one night, then spend the next morning overseeing a hospital donation. Her routine involved cleaning silverware, serving cocktails at wedding receptions, and juggling bills. Would he lose patience with her simplicity, or would she feel inadequate in his circles? Those thoughts nagged at Elena's mind on a Sunday afternoon, while she took a rare day off to visit her parents' graves. The cemetery was a small, peaceful place at the edge of town, a grassy slope dotted with slender trees. She knelt to brush leaves from the worn headstones, tears burning behind her eyes as she whispered a greeting to them, an old habit she'd maintained since they passed. "I wish you were here," she murmured, voice trembling. "You'd know what to tell me. Everything's changing so fast. I'm scared, but I'm happy." She closed her eyes, remembering her mother's gentle smile, her father's encouraging hug. They had always dreamed big for her, but after their deaths, she'd never let herself dream too far. There was always rent to pay, chores to handle, responsibilities weighing her down. Now, though, she sensed a chance at something extraordinary. And though she feared getting hurt, she also felt her parents would urge her to embrace it, to let herself be loved, if this was real. She stood, smoothing her coat and pressing a final soft kiss to the top of each headstone. The sky overhead was gray but calm. As she turned to leave, her phone buzzed in her bag. She fished it out, heart jumping when she saw Julian's name. "How's your Sunday?" his text read. She glanced back at the headstones, a gentle ache in her chest, and replied, "Visiting my parents. It's a quiet day, thinking of you." Moments later, he messaged back, "I'm around if you need an ear or a distraction. Would you like to meet somewhere, maybe just for a walk?" She checked the time. Late afternoon, the rest of the day free. She smiled softly, grateful for the timing. "That would be nice," she typed. "How about the lakeside park near downtown? I can be there in half an hour." "Perfect," came his immediate response. 15 minutes later, Elena hopped off a bus at the edge of the park. The winding paths led through tall trees, turning slowly golden in the shift toward early summer, and angled down to a tranquil lake. Families tossed breadcrumbs to ducks, joggers passed by with rhythmic steps, and a few couples strolled hand in hand. She recognized a tall figure near the entrance, Julian, dressed in casual slacks and a light sweater, looking oddly relaxed compared to his usual crisp attire. His face lit up when he spotted her. She felt a flutter, recalling the last time they'd met in person. Although they'd spoken or texted often, it hadn't been possible to see each other with her busy work schedule. "Hi," she breathed as she approached. "Hi," he echoed, leaning in to brush a gentle kiss on her cheek. "How are you holding up?" Elena forced a small smile. "Better now. I just had a reflective morning. Visiting my parents' graves can stir up old memories." His expression softened with empathy. "I'm sorry you lost them so young. Must be hard carrying that alone." She shrugged, swallowing a lump in her throat. "It's been years, but sometimes it still feels fresh. I think they'd like you, though," she added softly, stepping closer so they could walk in sync toward the water. Julian reached for her hand, warmth enveloping her fingers. "I'd be honored if they did," he said simply. Then, with a gentleness that matched her mood, he guided her onto a winding path beneath the park's broad oak trees. They walked in companionable silence at first, leaves crunching under their feet, distant laughter from children echoing off the lake's surface. She breathed in the crisp air, letting it clear her thoughts. After a few minutes, Julian cleared his throat. "I've been meaning to ask," he said quietly. "Would you like to come for dinner at the mansion sometime? My mother often hosts small gatherings. Nothing fancy, just close friends or family. I thought it might be nice, if you feel comfortable." Her heart jolted. Meeting Beatrice again in a more personal setting? The idea felt daunting, but a part of her longed to see more of Julian's day-to-day world, not just the polished events. Slowly, she nodded. "I'd like that. I might be nervous, though." He squeezed her hand. "I'll be there, and it won't be a big crowd, no more than 6 or 7 people. We can find a night that works with your schedule." She exhaled, relieved. "All right then. Yes." They approached a wooden bench overlooking the lake. They sat, the water rippling softly under the late afternoon light. Elena glanced at the reflection of the clouds, still and serene on the glassy surface. I've been thinking," she began tentatively. "I care about you, where this is going. But sometimes I get scared, like you're so used to big responsibilities and meeting influential people. I don't want to slow you down." Julian's eyes flicked to her, surprised. "You're not slowing me down," he said firmly. "You remind me that life can be genuine, unhurried, and meaningful beyond networking or obligations." He paused, collecting his thoughts. "I've had relationships in the past where I was just an accessory, someone to show off, or a wallet to tap. You've never treated me like that. It's refreshing." Her heart squeezed. She rested her head on his shoulder, feeling the soft knit of his sweater against her cheek. "All I know is I like being around you," she murmured. "Your family name and your money? It doesn't change that you're a good man." He turned slightly, pressing a gentle kiss to her hair. "Thank you," he whispered. "I'm trying to be. Sometimes I fall short, but you make me want to do better." They sat like that, tranquil and close, for what felt like a stolen pocket of time. The sun dipped lower, painting the sky in honeyed hues. Eventually, Julian stirred, reaching into his pocket to check his phone. He frowned slightly. "I have a conference call tonight, board members from overseas, but I can spare a little while longer." Elena nodded. "We can head back soon. I don't want you to miss anything important." He gave her a lopsided grin. "This is important too, spending time with you. But okay, let's walk once around the lake and then I'll drive you home." That loop took them down a path lined with blossoming shrubs. The conversation turned lighter. He teased her about the time she apparently dozed off in the break room at work and woke up panicking that she'd missed an entire shift. She laughed, retorting that he probably had never missed a single appointment in his life. He admitted there was one time he slept through a morning meeting in London and woke to frantic calls from his assistant. Trading stories of small mishaps, they found common ground in being occasionally human amid expectations of perfection. When they finally returned to his parked car near the entrance, the sun had nearly set, the sky darkening to a deep lavender. Julian unlocked the doors and helped her into the passenger seat. He started the engine, guided the car onto the nearby road, and they fell into a comfortable silence. Elena traced the silver bracelet on her wrist, thinking of how carefully Julian had picked it for her. The charms glinted faintly in the dim cabin light. She wondered if, in some small way, it symbolized the bond growing between them. Delicate, yet real, small steps toward a future neither dared define too soon. The drive to her apartment was short. When he parked by her building's curb, Elena noticed a few neighbors hanging about, chatting on the steps. She felt a slight self-consciousness, unsure how they might react to seeing her exit a luxury car with an elegant man. But then she caught herself. So what if they gossiped? She wasn't doing anything wrong. Julian looked at her with a gentle expression. "Shall I walk you up again?" Her lips quirked. "I'll be fine," she said. Then, in a daring moment of affection, she leaned over the console and pressed a soft kiss to his cheek. "Thank you for the walk, and for being so wonderful." He turned his head, meeting her gaze with warmth. Briefly, his hand lifted to brush her hair aside. "I'll call you tomorrow," he promised. In that second, she thought he might close the distance for a deeper kiss, but the presence of neighbors and the public street held him back. Instead, he sighed, offering a contented smile. "Good night, Elena." She opened the door, stepping onto the pavement. "Good night, Julian." On the building steps, her neighbors took note of the car, some with raised eyebrows, others with idle curiosity. Elena gave them a polite wave, refusing to show any embarrassment, and headed inside. Upstairs, her apartment greeted her with silence, but her heart buzzed with the echoes of Julian's presence, the gentle reassurance of his voice. Placing her purse on the couch, she turned on the lamp and let out a shaky breath. Moments with Julian always left her both fulfilled and yearning. Checking her phone, she found no new messages yet. A small part of her missed him already. Crazy how quickly she'd grown attached to that sense of him being near. Without overthinking, she slid off her shoes and wandered to her tiny kitchen, pouring a glass of water. The memory of his words drifted through her mind. "You make me want to do better." She hoped that meant he truly wanted her in his life, not as a fleeting distraction, but as someone to share the load of responsibilities and joys. At the same time, a whisper of caution reminded her that new relationships, especially ones crossing social divides, could face challenges. Skeptical acquaintances, potential media chatter, the weight of his philanthropic obligations. Would she be strong enough to navigate all that? Or would she find herself overshadowed? Looking down, she fingered the silver bracelet, the tiny crescent moon charm catching the lamplight. In her heart, she felt a quiet assurance bloom. No matter what troubles might arise, she wanted to try. The path leading from a lost wallet to this delicate bond was too extraordinary to ignore. She finished her water, set the glass in the sink, and made her way to her bedroom. As she changed into pajamas, she reflected on the small, precious moments from the day, the comforting loop around the lake, his readiness to join her in something as simple as a walk, the gentle acceptance in his eyes when she confessed her fears. For a brief, fearless second, she let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, they could find a future that honored both of their worlds. "Please let it be real," she murmured into the silence, curling beneath a thin blanket. A new day would dawn soon enough, bringing with it more work, more texts from Julian, and more steps forward in this uncertain dance between their lives. And Elena, tired as she was, drifted into sleep with a small, hopeful smile painted on her lips. By midweek, Elena's nerves were already dancing at the thought of dinner at the Blackwell mansion. Julian had confirmed a date, Friday evening, and explained it would be a small gathering with only a few close associates of his mother, plus his brother Daniel, who happened to be in town for a short stay. Though Elena welcomed the opportunity, her anxiety grew each passing day. She spent her free moments mentally rehearsing how to carry herself in front of the Blackwell circle, hoping she wouldn't commit any etiquette faux pas. On Thursday night, she sat at her kitchen table with Teresa, who had swung by after her shift. They ate takeout and leafed through a pile of dresses Elena had collected over the years, many outdated or ill-fitting. She'd already worn that slate blue satin dress to the museum gala, and she worried it might seem repetitive. Teresa, chewing on a French fry, pointed at the darker, midnight blue option on the table. "That one's simpler," Teresa said, frowning in concentration. "But with the right accessories, it could look elegant enough. And you won't be competing with anything you wore before. It's a totally different vibe." Elena lifted the midnight blue dress, letting the fabric fall smoothly. It was knee-length, with short sleeves and a modest scoop neckline. Nothing too extravagant. She fingered the hem, exhaling. "I'm no fashion icon, but it might work." Teresa shrugged, offering a supportive grin. "You're lovely as is. Plus, you have that new bracelet from Julian. Perfect accessory. Maybe wear some small earrings and you're set." Elena smiled. her heart warming at the reminder of Julian's gift. She'd worn the bracelet daily, taking it off only when washing dishes at work. Each time she glanced at the charms, she remembered his earnest eyes when he gave it to her. "Thanks," Elena said softly, standing to hold the dress against herself in the mirror. "I just hope I don't let him down. He says it'll be a casual dinner, but casual in that mansion is probably a million miles from our idea of casual." Teresa hopped off the chair, taking Elena's shoulders lightly. "You listen to me. You've got this. Julian chose you, not some fancy socialite. Trust his instinct, and trust yourself." Though Elena tried to imprint her friend's pep talk on her mind, she barely slept that night. The next day at work was a blur of carrying trays, double-checking a wedding cake's arrival, and folding napkins in neat patterns. Despite her best efforts, her hands shook with anticipation. By the time late afternoon rolled around, she was relieved to clock out. She hurried home, showered, and carefully styled her hair in soft waves, pinning a small section back with a silver clip. She slipped into the midnight blue dress, then paused in front of the mirror to fasten Julian's bracelet around her wrist. A final dusting of light makeup, and she was ready. Her phone chimed precisely at 6. "Outside whenever you're set, no rush." She peered out her window to see a sleek black car idling by the curb. Julian stood on the sidewalk scanning the building. Elena inhaled, grabbed her small clutch, and set forth. When she reached him, Julian's face brightened and he greeted her with a warm embrace. "You look beautiful," he said, sincerity in every syllable. She tried to quell the butterflies in her stomach. "Thank you. You look pretty great yourself." He wore a tailored charcoal suit minus the tie, the collar of his crisp white shirt open. The lack of formality in his outfit put her fractionally at ease. The drive to the mansion took less than 20 minutes. Night was falling swiftly, bathing the city in the warm, subdued glow of street lamps. Elena watched the transition from urban bustle to quiet, tree-lined roads, eventually passing the tall hedges marking the Blackwell estate. The gates swung open upon the car's approach, reminding her of the day she'd first come here to return Julian's wallet. Her heart clenched at how drastically life had changed in just a few short weeks. Julian helped her out of the car, linking his fingers with hers as they crossed the wide driveway. Lights from ornate lamps illuminated the mansion's stately facade. This time, the mansion doors opened to reveal a gentle hum of activity inside. The hush of a small gathering, muffled laughter, and the subtle strains of classical music from hidden speakers. A middle-aged butler bowed slightly in greeting. "Mr. Julian, Miss Dixon, welcome. Madame Beatrice is waiting in the main lounge." Elena exhaled, stepping into the foyer. Polished marble gleamed underfoot, and soft, warm lighting accentuated the tasteful artwork along the walls. Julian guided her gently by the arm toward a corridor that led to a spacious but inviting living area. There, Beatrice Blackwell stood with two other people. One, a tall man in his early 30s with a similarly poised bearing, Daniel, no doubt. The other, a stylish, older gentleman Elena recognized from the museum event, perhaps one of the mother's close confidants. Beatrice's eyes lit on Elena with polite warmth. "Good evening, my dear. I'm pleased you could join us. You remember Mr. Astor from the arts program, yes?" Elena nodded at the older gentleman. "Good evening, sir. It's nice to see you again." He offered a friendly smile. "Likewise, Miss Dixon. Enjoyed meeting you at the fundraiser." Beatrice then turned slightly. "And this is Julian's brother, Daniel Blackwell. He's usually halfway around the globe, but we've managed to capture him for a while." Daniel extended a hand toward Elena, lips curving into a grin that mirrored Julian's. "Elena, I've heard good things," he teased, winking at his brother. "Julian doesn't often gush, but let's just say he's uncharacteristically chatty about you." Elena's cheeks warmed. She shook his hand, relieved that he seemed easygoing. "I hope that's a good sign." Daniel chuckled. "Absolutely." Beatrice gestured for everyone to take seats, The lounge was arranged in a casual circle of plush armchairs and a velvet sofa. Elena perched beside Julian on the sofa, smoothing her dress beneath her. A staff member appeared with a tray of sparkling water and fruit-infused teas. Despite the cozy atmosphere, Elena's heart still hammered. She wanted to present herself well. The next half hour passed in polite conversation. Daniel inquired about Elena's work at the catering hall, and she found herself explaining the intricacies of planning big receptions and weddings. He listened intently, occasionally trading jokes with Julian about the fiascos of wedding planning. Beatrice asked about Elena's hometown, and Elena spoke of losing her parents, though she kept the details brief. Through it all, Elena was aware of Beatrice watching her, not with overt suspicion, but a measured curiosity. Yet it felt gentler than their first meeting. Maybe the older woman had begun to accept Elena's place, or at least was giving her a fair chance. Eventually, they moved to the dining room, an elegant but not overly large space with a polished mahogany table set for 6. A single lavish centerpiece, roses mingled with eucalyptus, added a subtle floral fragrance. The dinner itself was served family-style by discreet staff: rosemary chicken, roasted vegetables, and a light soup to start. Elena found the meal delicious, though she fought to keep her posture and table manners in check. Conversation ebbed and flowed. Mr. Astor regaled them with a story about a new youth art exhibit in the works. Daniel chimed in about his philanthropic travels. He'd just returned from South America, where he'd visited schools funded by Blackwell Charities. At one point, Julian asked Elena about her thoughts on how to improve community programs. She answered candidly about the importance of giving not just funds but mentorship, citing how she believed personal connection mattered more than faceless donations. Beatrice nodded thoughtfully at that, a spark of approval flitting across her features. Elena tried to steady herself, hoping she didn't sound naive, but each time she glanced Julian's way, she caught a comforting glimmer in his gaze that said he was proud of her honesty. Dessert arrived next, small bowls of crème brûlée with fresh berries. Elena savored each spoonful, marveling at the contrast of crisp sugar and creamy custard. She realized she was truly enjoying the evening. Though nerves still simmered, the conversation was relaxed, built around shared interest in doing good. After dinner, they gathered in a smaller sitting area where a gentle fire crackled in a stone fireplace. Julian and Daniel excused themselves briefly to check on some matter of business, something about philanthropic funds that needed a quick signature. That left Elena alone with Beatrice and Mr. Astor. She perched in an armchair, heart ticking a bit faster. To her relief, Beatrice steered the conversation toward unthreatening territory. She spoke about her younger days traveling Europe, how her love of art galleries led her to champion youth art programs. Mr. Astor added anecdotes, painting a picture of the family's philanthropic evolution. Elena listened intently, gleaning insights into the Blackwells' long history of altruism. Eventually, Mr. Astor excused himself to take a call, leaving Beatrice and Elena alone. A few seconds of silence followed, broken only by the pop of the fireplace. Elena cleared her throat. "Thank you for having me tonight, Mrs. Blackwell. It's very kind." Beatrice studied Elena with a gentle expression. "I'm pleased you accepted. And it's Beatrice, please," she corrected mildly. "Formality has its place, but this is my home." Elena nodded, feeling a wave of gratitude. "Beatrice, then. I appreciate the warmth you've shown me, truly." The older woman's lips curved. "I admit I was cautious at first. Julian has had, well, let's say challenging encounters with people who see only his wallet, not his heart. But I see that you're sincere, Elena, and I respect that. There's a sincerity about you that reminds me of what truly matters." She paused, letting the flames in the fireplace reflect in her eyes. "He cares for you. I can see it, clear as day." Elena's pulse fluttered. "I care for him too, enough that it scares me a little." Beatrice's expression softened. "Good. That fear tells me it's real. Just promise me one thing. If the demands of this life ever weigh on you, or you feel uncertain, speak up. To Julian, or even to me, communication is how we keep misunderstandings from festering. The sincerity in Beatrice's voice touched Elena deeply. She nodded, words catching in her throat. Before she could respond, Julian and Daniel returned, seemingly buoyant about whatever they had discussed. Julian's gaze went right to Elena, checking if she was okay. She offered a smile that she hoped conveyed yes, more than okay. A while later, with the evening winding down, the group dispersed. Mr. Astor bid farewell, and Daniel decided to stay the night in the guest wing. Beatrice graciously embraced Elena, a sign of acceptance that made Elena's eyes sting with gratitude. Then Julian walked her out to the foyer, retrieving her coat and offering to drive her home. They stepped outside under a moonlit sky, the mansion's exterior lights casting a regal glow across the gardens. Julian placed a gentle hand on her back, guiding her down the steps. "You did wonderfully," he murmured. "Everyone was impressed by your passion, especially my mother." Elena let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. It felt nice, not half as scary as I'd imagined. He smiled, leaning closer to kiss her temple. "I'm proud of you." His car was parked near the front entrance. Once they settled in, engine purring softly, Elena allowed a wave of relief and contentment to envelop her. "Your brother's great," she remarked, recalling Daniel's easy humor. "I like him." "He liked you too," Julian replied, reversing gently down the driveway. "He told me so while we dealt with that paperwork. He said you're genuine." "I knew that already, but I'm happy he sees it too." They drove off into the night, the mansion's lights growing smaller in the rearview mirror. Elena gazed at the stars overhead, feeling as though a weight had lifted from her shoulders. Dinner with the Blackwells hadn't been some unattainable, terrifying ordeal. It had been warm, almost intimate, despite the grand setting. Beatrice's final words echoed in her mind. "If it weighs on you, speak up." Turning to Julian, she couldn't help but feel that for the first time she had permission to imagine a future where they continued building this connection, bridging the gap between their worlds with every honest conversation, every shared meal. And for now, that was enough. "Thank you for tonight," she said, placing a hand over his on the gear shift. "For letting me in and making sure I never felt out of place." Julian glanced over with a tender smile. "I want you in every part of my life. Don't forget that." In that quiet assertion, Elena felt the gentle promise that she belonged. As the car merged onto the road toward her apartment, she leaned back into the seat, bracelet glimmering faintly in the passing headlights. Maybe love, as improbable and unexpected as it seemed, was closer than she'd ever dared to hope. A gentle rain blanketed the city the following evening, turning the streets glossy and reflecting the glow of street lamps. Elena stood by the catering hall's rear exit, shielding herself from the drizzle as she waited for Teresa to finish locking up. They had just wrapped up a large corporate reception, and exhaustion crept into Elena's bones. Still, her mind hummed with residual warmth from the dinner at the Blackwell mansion, memories of candlelight, shared laughter, and Julian's unwavering gaze. "Ready?" Teresa asked, stepping outside and flipping up the collar of her jacket against the rain. "We can split a cab if you like. My treat." Elena smiled, grateful. "Sure. The bus schedules are irregular in this weather. Thank you." They hurried down the block to a better-lit intersection, scanning for a taxi. As they paused, Teresa nudged Elena. "You've been quieter tonight. Everything okay with you and Mr. Wonderful?" Elena managed a small laugh. "Julian's busy today, some meeting or another. But everything's fine, really." She considered how to best describe the swirl of thoughts inside her. "I guess I'm just waiting to see how things progress. We've been spending time, meeting each other's circles, and it's been good. Sometimes I pinch myself, wondering if this is all real." Teresa patted Elena's shoulder. Girl, if it makes you happy and he treats you right, then let it be as real as can be. Don't overthink. The taxi arrived and they climbed in. The ride home was brief, just enough time for Elena to fill Teresa in on how dinner with the Blackwells went. Teresa hung on every detail, peppering Elena with questions. By the time they reached Elena's apartment building, the rain had intensified, puddles forming on the sidewalk. She thanked Teresa and dashed inside. In the elevator, Elena's phone buzzed. She fished it out, heart clenching at Julian's name on the screen. Missed hearing your voice today. Hope work went well. Can I call you? A grin spread across her face, despite the fatigue. The elevator doors opened and she stepped into her floor's hallway, typing back, "Of course, just got home." Moments later, the phone rang. She answered with a soft, "Hi," already feeling tension slip away. Julian's voice warmed her ear. "Hi yourself, how are you doing?" "Good. Tired. But your text brightened my night," she admitted, juggling keys to unlock her apartment door. She pushed inside, flipping on the living room lamp and dropping her purse on the sofa. "How was your day?" He sighed, the sound of distant traffic audible on his end of the call. "Long. Meetings about expansions for one of our educational programs, plus a quick check-in with my mother. She's heading out of town for a conference tomorrow. Daniel's already gone again, so the house feels empty." Elena pictured the grand, echoing halls of the Blackwell mansion. Without family around, she supposed it could feel lonely, no matter its size. "You could have called me sooner," she said teasingly. "I'm always free to chat if you need company." His low chuckle made her heart flutter. "I didn't want to interrupt your shift, but hearing your voice is definitely the remedy I needed." She settled onto the couch, tucking her legs beneath her. "So, anything interesting happened today with the educational program?" He launched into a summary about a plan to build more community centers in underprivileged neighborhoods, describing a couple of challenges they'd encountered: bureaucratic red tape, reluctant local politicians. Elena asked questions, genuinely intrigued. This world of philanthropic negotiations was new to her, but she found it fascinating, especially how Julian faced each hurdle with determination. When his voice became tinged with frustration over stalled permits, Elena offered suggestions about local volunteers or small business partnerships drawn from her own observations in the community. He listened thoughtfully, occasionally exclaiming at how he hadn't considered a particular angle. Their conversation drifted, touching on lighter topics: her day at work, a new dessert recipe she'd learned from the head chef, the wry observation that corporate events were often less cheerful than weddings. Julian joked he might hire her to cater a future family brunch, and she laughed, imagining herself in the Blackwell kitchen, flipping pancakes for a room full of sophisticated guests. Eventually, a lull settled. Elena sensed Julian's mood had shifted to something more personal. The quiet static of the phone connection and the distant hum of rain tapping her window created an intimate cocoon. "Elena," he said softly, "I've never met someone who grounds me the way you do. You make me see beyond the usual swirl of my world." Her breath caught. "I just want you to be happy, Julian, and I want to be a part of your life in a genuine way. No pretending, no illusions." "I feel the same," he murmured. "Look, I know we haven't labeled anything yet, but I'd like us to be a real couple, to move forward together. Is that okay to say?" Heat bloomed in her cheeks, her heart thudding in sheer delight. "Yes," she whispered. "It is. I want that too." He exhaled as if relieved by her answer. "Good. Then let's make it official." A playful note colored his tone. "Elena Dixon, will you be my girlfriend?" She laughed softly, pressing a hand over her mouth. "Yes, Julian Blackwell, I will." It felt momentous, yet so natural, as if they'd been quietly building toward this all along. The memory of how they met, her returning his wallet, flashed in her mind, reminding her of how fate sometimes unfolds in unexpected ways. They spoke a bit longer, exchanging gentle confidences and a few inside jokes, talking about silly habits and favorite childhood shows. When the hour grew late and their yawns became more frequent, Julian wished her sweet dreams. Setting her phone aside, Elena leaned against the cushions, heart drumming with joy. She was now, in an official sense, Julian Blackwell's girlfriend. A swirl of excitement and vulnerability passed through her. Yes, it was just a word, but it captured the closeness they'd been nurturing. She resolved to embrace it, fears and all. The next day, she awakened to a text from Julian. "Good morning, girlfriend. How's your Friday?" Her grin lit up her entire room. She typed back a cheery greeting, telling him she was heading into work. All through her shift, she carried that bright secret in her thoughts, a whispered knowledge that, while life might still throw curveballs, she had someone who cared for her deeply. Near the day's end, she received an unexpected call from an unknown number. She hesitated, then answered. A woman's voice crackled through the line. "Am I speaking with Miss Dixon? This is Celia Harper, a journalist from City Central Weekly." Elena's stomach dropped. "Yes, that's me. How can I help you?" "Well," said the journalist, "I understand you've been seen in the company of Julian Blackwell. I'm working on a piece about the Blackwell family's philanthropic involvements, and I'd love to interview you about your perspective, particularly how your relationship began." Alarm bells clanged in Elena's mind. This wasn't something she'd expected. "I'm sorry, Ms. Harper," she said carefully, "but I'm not sure I'm the right person to talk about that. I don't have any official role in the foundation or anything." "Ah, but you do seem close to Mr. Blackwell," the journalist persisted, a note of eagerness in her tone. "Word is, you've attended events with him. City Central's readers are always curious about personal aspects of the Blackwells' lives. It might benefit the Foundation's public image to have a fresh angle." Elena's pulse quickened. She didn't like the implication that her private life was now fodder for public curiosity. "I appreciate the offer," she said stiffly, "but I prefer my privacy. I'm sorry." Without waiting for the journalist to push, she ended the call. A sick feeling churned in her stomach. She wasn't used to the idea that her personal comings and goings might interest a tabloid-like magazine. Hugging her arms around herself, she took a moment to breathe, leaning against the catering hall's storeroom wall. Was this the kind of intrusion she'd have to get used to if she stayed by Julian's side? She recalled how calmly he'd handled public scrutiny, always with practiced tact. But for her, it felt intrusive, almost claustrophobic. She decided to text him. "Just got a weird call from a journalist at City Central Weekly, asking about us. I refused to talk, feeling uneasy." He replied almost immediately, "I'm so sorry. Are you okay? They must have caught wind of something. I can handle it. Give me 5 minutes." True to his word, he called her soon after. "Elena, I'm sorry," he began, voice sincere. "The press sometimes oversteps. They've been sniffing around for a new angle on the family, especially after the arts fundraiser success. I'll have my PR team set a boundary. If they reach out again, just refer them to our public relations manager." She breathed easier hearing his calm tone. "Thank you. It just caught me off guard." "I understand," he said gently. "It's not fair that you get dragged into this, but we can handle it together. Don't worry, no one can force you to do any interview, and if anyone harasses you, we'll put a stop to it." His assurances steadied her. Still, after she ended the call, a residue of anxiety lingered. She realized how easily privacy could slip away once people noticed her relationship with a high-profile figure. While she was elated to be Julian's girlfriend, she'd never considered that outsiders might pry, speculation fueling gossip columns or tabloids. That night, after returning home, she sank onto her couch, replaying the journalist's call in her head. She told herself that Julian's vow to protect her privacy should be enough. Yet a part of her fretted over the possibility of more phone calls, or even someone appearing at her job to ask questions. She recalled Beatrice's words, "If it weighs on you, speak up." Maybe that was exactly what she needed to do. Voice her worries to Julian plainly. Trust that they could navigate this. If she kept silent, fear might fester. Her phone buzzed. A text from Julian. "I spoke with my PR manager. They'll intercept any further inquiries. I promise we'll shield you from the worst of it. Let's talk soon. I miss you." Relief mingled with lingering unease. She typed back a simple reply. "Thank you. I miss you too." After a restless night, Elena decided to confide in Teresa about the journalist's call, seeking a friend's perspective. Teresa listened, eyes wide. "Whoa, that's a big deal. But you know what? Maybe it's just a one-time thing, or maybe not, but you care about Julian, right? This is part of the package." Elena nodded glumly. "I do. I guess I need to be ready for it. It's just so different from my normal, quiet life." Teresa gave her a gentle hug. "You'll adjust, or find a compromise. He's on your side. That's key. And you're strong, Elena. You've overcome worse challenges than pushy reporters." Reassured, Elena tried to move on with her day, focusing on tasks at the hall. Indeed, no more calls came that week. It seemed Julian's PR team had done their job. Her phone stayed silent from unknown numbers. The weekend arrived without incident, and she spent Saturday with Julian, strolling through a local market, sampling street foods and admiring artisanal crafts. He'd insisted on a normal, everyday date, free from any philanthropic obligations. They held hands, laughed over silly souvenirs, and ate too many sweet pastries. If any curious onlooker recognized him, they kept their distance. Elena savored the sense of ordinary joy that day, letting it soften the memory of the journalist's intrusion. That evening, they ended up at Elena's apartment, sharing a simple homemade dinner. She felt a faint apprehension, worried he might find her place too small or unrefined. Yet Julian seemed perfectly at ease, happily seated at her modest kitchen table, praising her cooking skills while they sipped cheap red wine. "Thank you for letting me see your world," he said at one point, glancing around the cozy living room visible from the kitchen. "It's nice to be away from all the formalities and staff for a while." She relaxed, smiling shyly. "You're welcome anytime. Though it's not much, He set his glass down, taking her hand. "Don't say that. It's you, Elena. That's what makes it special." Her heart fluttered, and she leaned forward, resting her head against his shoulder. In that quiet moment, she felt the all-too-familiar paradox. With him, she was sure of what her heart wanted, this connection, this warmth. But outside these walls, an entire social divide and media circus waited, ready to test the strength of their bond. Still, she reminded herself of what Teresa had said. "You're strong. You've faced worse." And Julian's unwavering tenderness gave her hope that maybe, just maybe, a quiet girl with a humble life could bridge the gap to a man whose name alone attracted headlines. They lingered together late into the night, exchanging soft murmurs about the future, spinning small dreams of possible travels or new charities they might explore together. By the time Julian finally left, pressing a lingering kiss to her doorstep, Elena closed the door, feeling more certain than ever that they were choosing each other despite the odds. A few weeks passed in a gentle rhythm of work, shared meals, and late-night phone calls. Elena's life with Julian had found a comfortable groove, one balanced between her humble routines and his high-profile commitments. She'd grown familiar with hearing snippets of his philanthropic achievements, while he'd come to treasure the small joys of her quiet apartment and the honest warmth of her friendship circle. The journalist's scare had receded, thanks to Julian's PR team maintaining firm boundaries. Yet Elena remained watchful. Sometimes, as she walked home in the evenings, she'd catch a flicker of worry in the back of her mind, scanning the street for any sign of cameras or prying eyes. But so far, none had surfaced. If the press were still curious, they at least kept their distance. One sunny Saturday, Julian insisted they enjoy an afternoon outside the city. She finished her morning shift at the catering hall, just a bit of setup duty for a small bridal shower, then hurried to change clothes. He picked her up in his sedan, and they drove out into the countryside, the windows rolled down to let in fresh air. The farmland around them gave way to gentle hills dotted with wildflowers. "I want to show you something," Julian said, guiding the car onto a narrow, winding road. "It's a place my family used to visit, back when I was a child. It's not fancy or anything, but I always found it peaceful." They pulled into a gravel lot near a creek bordered by tall willow trees. The water sparkled under midday sun. Elena's breath caught at the idyllic scene. The babbling creek curved around a small meadow, and beyond that rose a modest, time-worn barn. Stepping out, she stretched her limbs, feeling the tension of the week melt away. Julian led her across a wooden footbridge, the boards creaking underfoot. "My parents rented this land years ago from an old family friend," he explained, "and we would come during summers. Daniel and I used to fish in this creek, though we were lousy at it." He chuckled, stepping onto the meadow grass. Elena laughed, imagining a younger Julian splashing in the water, far removed from boardrooms or gala events. "It's beautiful," she said, admiring the wild daisies bobbing in a gentle breeze. They meandered along the creek, occasionally pausing to throw pebbles and watch the water ripple. A blue sky spread overhead, dotted with cottony clouds. For Elena, it felt like stepping into a memory of simpler times. Here, no reporters lurked, no phones buzzed with urgent demands. It was just them, the sun-warmed grass, and the tranquil hush of flowing water. When they reached the barn, Julian pried open its creaky door. Inside, light streamed through gaps in the weathered planks, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. A few old crates remained, along with a wooden bench near a large window that faced the pasture. He guided her to the bench. They sat, shoulders touching, gazing out at the land. "Sometimes," he murmured, voice low, "I yearn for this. A place untethered from expectations. My mother tries to keep me grounded and Daniel supports me, but it's so easy to get swept up in obligations. That's why having you in my life has made such a difference." Elena turned to him, heart swelling. "I feel the same, you know. My world isn't big or glamorous, but it can still be stressful. Constant budgeting, multiple shifts, plus the fear of never moving forward. You give me hope that there's more out there than just daily survival." His eyes roamed her face, tender and intent. The barn's soft light caught in the silver bracelet on her wrist, making the crescent moon charm gleam. "I can't promise everything will be easy," he said quietly, "especially with who I am and how people sometimes chase the Blackwell name. But I do promise I'll face it with you. I want us to be a true partnership." She inhaled, the dusty barn air mingling with the sweet fragrance of wildflowers drifting through the cracks. "I believe you," she whispered, leaning closer. "I want that too." Their kiss was gentle, unhurried, the kind of shared moment that felt like a vow. The barn, the creek, the rolling hills beyond, everything faded into a hush, leaving only the heartbeat of two people who'd bridged differences of class and circumstance to find genuine affection. Eventually, Julian broke the kiss, pressing his forehead to hers. "We might be at a crossroads, Elena," he said, voice trembling slightly. "I'm scheduled to travel overseas soon, a trip to finalize a new partnership for the foundation. It could be a few weeks away. I don't want that to derail us." Her fingers laced through his. "It won't," she promised. "I'll still be here, living my life, waiting to hear your stories when you come back. But I'll miss you." He closed his eyes, exhaling softly. "I'll miss you too. Let's make the most of the time before I go." They spent another hour wandering the meadow, eventually spreading a blanket near the creek's edge and enjoying a small picnic of fruit, cheese, and sparkling water he'd packed. Elena felt a lightness she hadn't experienced in years, savoring each laugh and affectionate exchange. Her phone buzzed a couple of times, texts from Teresa, random notifications, but she ignored them, steeping in the moment with Julian. As the afternoon waned, a hush settled over them. Julian stared at the creek in deep thought, then turned to her. "Come with me on a short trip before I leave," he said, eyes alight with spontaneous excitement. "Just a weekend getaway, something simple. I found a cozy inn by a lakeshore. We don't have to do anything fancy, just be together." She blinked, her heart leaping. "Really? I'd love that. But are you sure you can slip away from your responsibilities?" He waved a hand. "2 days at most. My schedule can handle it, and I need it, for my sanity." Then his grin turned playful. "Besides, I need to show off my subpar fishing skills to you." She chuckled. "Then I'm in. Though I'm warning you, I've never fished in my life, so you'll have to teach me your subpar technique." With that decided, they packed up and headed back to the car, a sense of excitement thrumming between them. The following weekend arrived with crisp weather, perfect for a lakeside retreat. Helena managed to trade shifts with a co-worker, though she worried about missing out on a bit of pay. Still, she told herself that once in a while she deserved a break, especially for something that promised to strengthen their bond. Julian picked her up early Saturday, the trunk already packed with a cooler of snacks and a couple of fishing poles. They drove out of town under bright morning skies, singing along, badly, to old hits on the radio. Elena felt a surge of gratitude that life could sometimes be this simple and free. The inn was nestled by a shimmering lake surrounded by pine trees. Its rustic charm and modest cabins appealed to Elena far more than any luxury hotel might have. The owner, a jovial older man, handed them a key with a knowing smile, pointing out hiking trails and canoe rentals. Julian joked that they should try canoeing if they survived fishing first. Their cabin had a porch that overlooked the water. After settling in, they ventured down to the lake's small dock, rods in hand. Elena watched Julian fumble with the fishing line, both of them giggling at his lack of finesse. "I told you I'm rusty," he insisted, but eventually he showed her how to bait a hook and cast a line. They perched on the dock, shoes off, legs dangling over the edge, the gentle sway of the water lapping against the posts. Hours passed in laughter and conversation, occasionally interrupted by the thrill of feeling a tug on their lines, though most attempts ended with the fish wriggling free. Once, Elena squealed as a small fish nearly flopped onto the dock before flipping away. Julian teased her for jumping back so fast, but he ended up just as startled. By the time the sun dipped toward the horizon, they were fishless but giddy, content to watch the sky blaze with oranges and purples. They returned to the cabin, cheeks flushed from the fresh air. Julian prepared a modest dinner of grilled vegetables and chicken, topped off with a glass of decent wine. As evening settled in, they lit a small fire in the stone hearth, the flicker casting dancing shadows on the cabin walls. Sitting on the rug before the fire, Elena leaned her head against Julian's shoulder. "This," she murmured, "is perfect." He slipped an arm around her waist. "I keep imagining we could do this more often, escape somewhere quiet, away from demands. But no matter where we are," he added, turning to look at her, "it's you that makes it feel like home." Tears prickled her eyes. "I feel that too," she whispered. "I never thought I'd be able to say something like that about, well, anyone. But with you, it's like every uncertainty is worth facing." Julian's hand found hers, fingers intertwining, the bracelet's charms tinkling softly at the movement. "Let's promise each other this," he said, voice low. "No matter how hectic or pressurized things get, reporters, board meetings, late shifts, we'll carve out time for moments like this. We'll keep each other grounded." She nodded, overcome with warmth. I promise." Under the soft crackle of the fire, he leaned in and their lips met in a tender kiss that carried the sweetness of devotion and the quiet thrill of discovery. Outside, the lake's surface reflected the moon, serene and endless, while inside, the small cabin held a love that felt deep and genuine. It was a love born from a simple act of honesty, her returning his lost wallet. Yet it had grown into something neither had expected, spanning differences in background, wealth, and status. In that firelit moment, with no audience or pretense, they made an unspoken vow that no matter what the world threw at them, they'd stand together, forging a life that blended the best of both worlds. Eventually, the fire died to embers, and they curled up, lulled by the hush of nature outside the cabin walls. Elena's last thought before sleep claimed her was gratitude. For the chance encounter under that old oak tree, for Julian's unwavering kindness, and for the promise that, whatever came next, they had chosen each other. And in that choice, she felt more at home than ever before. If you enjoyed this story, don't miss the next one. Just click on the screen.